Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with Favors English Lectures. And so this is the assignment lecture for the transfer student, the personal statement. And there is an accompanying audio lecture for the assignment sheet. You can view that or listen to that as well. So the personal statement is the very first assignment that I give students in my first course. And it is part of the first year sequence. And this gives me an opportunity to assess the readiness of the student to begin researching their intended institution for transfer, as well as get the students to thinking about their intended career objective based upon their major. And it also gives me an opportunity to just really see where they are in their writing capacity and whether or not I have to help them to build writing capacity from an intermediate or advanced level. This assignment also gives students an opportunity to really begin planning, not just planning their writing, but planning their 2-year transition, because I always tell students that you are not here just to take your basics. I teach at the community college level. And you are not just here to take your basics, to complete your basics, but this is 2 years of planning. And so it is likely that you will be here for your freshman and sophomore years. And so you are attempting to transfer to the university context environment. And that's going to take some time. That's going to take you completing courses, and it's going to also take you planning that transition. And so if you are taking 4 or 5 courses, then your planning process is that 5th or 6th course. And that's not just once a year, that's every semester. So this is something that I want you to think about as you listen to this lecture, Transfer Student, the Personal Statement. Gain insight from it. This is the assignment lecture, and then there is an accompanying audio, the assignment sheet, that I go over briefly. This is Transfer Student, the Personal Statement, Favors English Lectures. I am Regina Y. Favors. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell if you are interested in further videos. Thank you for visiting the channel. This lecture is subject to fair use. Here are your learning objectives. So by the end of this online course, students will be able to do the following: recall the basics of writing a personal statement, analyze a sample writing prompt, review a sample personal statement, write the personal statement, and then revise a personal statement based on the views of the admissions officers, and also rewrite a personal statement based on academic, professional, and personal goals. So writing a personal statement has its process. It begins with researching your field and researching the institution in order to tailor your personal statement to that particular degree program. But it also requires you doing some or conducting some extended research into what admissions officers think about in terms of how they view a personal statement. And then, of course, you would need to revise, rewrite, and finalize your personal statement based on your academic, professional, and personal goals. And that takes some time to think about as well. So those first 2 years at the community college setting, because I teach this at the community college setting, gives you an opportunity to plan your transition. And so the earliest you can begin thinking about your personal statement, the better. So these are your learning objectives. The lecture and audience, the lecture begins with exploring different writing prompts and ends with a discussion on developing academic, professional, and personal goals. So you want to see the personal statement assignment sheet that is connected to this assignment lecture. And this lecture is appropriate for the first course and first year composition. So I usually teach English 1301 and 1302 at my community college. And so I teach it in that first course, which is part of the first year composition sequence. All right, so here are some pre-discussion questions, and you're going to see a variety of types of prompts, but have sort of like the same focus. What is your intended major or field? How did your interest in the major or field develop? Describe your experiences in the major or field, and then what have you gained as a result of your involvement in the major or field. So when admissions officers and department chairs and department faculty read your personal statement, they are looking to see just how interested you really are in this field, because they want to measure it based upon your participation. What have you done? Have you done any sort of internships, volunteer work? Do you write within your field as a student writer? And anything, what have you learned to date based upon your involvement? So you're going to see these questions here sort of rehashed in a different format, but it basically has the same focus. What is your intended major? Why are you interested? What have you done to date? What have you learned? So the personal statement, we have some reasons why the personal statement is a necessary tool for you. And if you think about the personal statement as being not just only a transfer admissions type of document, but as for you to plan out even your own career, it will help you to begin thinking about the processes that you need to take as you move from one level to the next academically, from one level to the next professionally in your future profession, and then one level to the next in your personal life, which for me includes personal finances. So let's look at some reasons why the personal statement is an important tool. So for one, it gives you an opportunity to express, right? This is your opportunity. I don't know how many times I hear people say, if you think about reality TV shows, especially those that are very competitive and that you can be, eliminated as a result of your contribution or lack thereof, or if it is lacking. And I like that reality TV show competition, Project Runway. And when a person is eliminated, you hear them give their sort of speech about, I just needed an opportunity. But the first time that you are there, the very first time that you made the cut out of all the thousands of people who were there, and then who applied and competed, and then you made the final cut, and then you did the first task, that was your opportunity. So you have to treat every time that you get a chance to do something as an opportunity. So the personal statement provides you with an opportunity to express why you want to enter the field, why you want to enter the institution, why you feel like the program at the institution is the best one for you. That means you have to know you. You have to know about what works for you, whether or not this field is for you, this future field. And we're going to get into an example of like accounting. I always use this in my classrooms, those individuals who want to major in accounting. And the first question I always ask, do you have a love for the numbers? Because accounting is looking at numbers all day, every day. You are holed up in an office, and you only come out for special meetings or to give a presentation or report. But the bulk of your day is looking at numbers all day, every day. And if you're saying by noon that you are tired of looking at numbers, that may not necessarily be the field for you. There may be a field that is connected to that, like, finance. It's about numbers too, but not like the tedious form of performing accounting is. So this is something you got to think about, because if you are a math major and you're not taking every opportunity to work out math problems just for practice, that's telling you shouldn't have to wait until you get to a classroom to begin thinking about math. If it's a passion for you, it's something that you would begin thinking about way before you even hit um, a college campus. So opportunity to express. It is also a persuasive argument because you are basically selling yourself through this personal statement that you are the right fit for not only the major, but also the career field, as well as the institution and the program. That why are they choosing you? And you are the one who has to understand that for yourself, that you are the right fit because, and only you can answer that question in 1, 2, 3 reasons, and then further expound and develop and explore it, right? So it is a persuasive argument because remember, thousands and thousands of students, applicants, college applicants apply to these schools and programs. And it's not just that you have to have the high GPA, which is very, very important. They still want the numbers. Institutions still like the numbers. But not only do you need to have the high GPA, but you definitely need to have not only some sort of engagement in the field through any type of internships or volunteer work or anything like that, but also an ability to communicate that you are the best fit, because you're going to have this need to persuade throughout your career. Why are you the best fit to be hired? Why are you the best fit to move up the corporate ladder or the academic ladder or the institutional, the nonprofit ladder, whatever that is? And so the more that you do well in your classes, the more that you engage in your field, the more that you do well in all areas that are connected to this field, the more confident that you're going to feel, and it's going to come out through your communication. So the personal statement really is a very important tool to get you thinking about how well you communicate and how well you can sort of like assess yourself in terms of communication. So persuasive argument. It's a sales presentation, right? So some majors require an interview, in-person interview. Now that we are in a pandemic, you may have to do a virtual interview, but it is a sales presentation. So how you present yourself, the clothes you wear, the way you wear your hair, depending upon the field. There are some fields that are very strict. You can't have a bunch of tattoos. You have to wear a suit and a tie. You have to wear a suit, a pantsuit or a dress suit or something like that. You have to have your hair manageable. It has nothing to do with sort of racial and gender-based implications. It is just the field. You're not going to see a lawyer, an attorney defending a client with a mohawk in the courthouse. There are certain fields that require you to look a certain kind of way. And so sales presentation does matter. If your major is business, usually you definitely have to do an interview with the chair of the department or with a faculty member. It could also be a business leader connected to the university, because they may provide scholarship opportunities. And so they want someone who is going to have their scholarship or use their scholarship to give them a good name, right? Or to support their brand. They don't want someone who's going to affect how the scholarship is used and how it is later projected in the field, right? So sales presentation. Reflection of experiences, life, educational work. So that's why it's very important not to get too distracted in other types of things, because when you do that, you really do interrupt yourself. So you need to know what life experiences you have, what your educational experiences you have, what work experiences you have up to date. Especially, for example, if you are getting into business, usually these are people who have some kind of entrepreneur mindset early. They had like a little lemonade stand, They had something that they were doing to make money, right? Selling tickets or something like that. And so that helps with your personal statement that business has been on your mind since you could remember, right? Since the time you were 10 or 11, 12 years old with your um, lemonade stand or something like that. Then educational, of course, you want to make good grades. I always say this to my students: you should be pulling A's in your major, especially if it is your major. Other courses you may struggle in because you really don't have a passion for them, you don't necessarily care about them, but your major, and sometimes it takes some time to catch up to the fact that you are the right fit for that particular major, because a lot of times we want the glam, the glam, the glitz, the glamour of living life, and so we want the big things. But a lot of times we are made just for where we are, and we do well where we are, and we thrive wherever that is, wherever we are. And so sometimes it takes a bit of a time to realize. I know for me, I didn't realize truly that I was going to become a teacher, but there were implications that I was going to become a teacher when I was younger. I used to line up my dolls, put pen and paper in front of them, those dolls and bears, and then teach them something. I don't know what I was teaching them, but I was teaching them something. And then I graduated to the neighborhood kids, lined them up, put pen and paper in front of them, and taught them something. Again, I don't know what I was teaching them, but there were implications that I was supposed to become a teacher. But by the time I got older, I was going initially for the money. So my major was initially computer science because I was going for the money. It wasn't until I started tutoring, assigned to a class to tutor students, that it just, some light bulb just turned on the inside of me, and I knew I was supposed to become a teacher. So those experiences do matter, because now that's kind of covering life educational work. Because then I started to actually do more tutoring, and then I went to graduate school, and I was a graduate teacher, and then I progressed from there, and I'm now an adjunct professor. So reflection of experiences really do matter. You may want to keep a journal. You may want to think about how important it is for you to be able to convey those experiences. Plan for achieving ambition. So regardless of what people tell you, college is for everybody. College allows you to process who you are as an individual, especially if you are the type of person who makes hasty decisions or get into things too quickly, or just have so much zeal that you don't think before the next step. This allows you to think about where you want to take yourself, what you want to do, what do you envision for yourself. And so the personal statement allows you to just begin the idea of planning for achieving your ambitions. If you later want to become this, whatever it is that you want to become, say you wanted to become an actor or actress, that's still going to take a plan, right, for achieving that. You're going to have to get some pictures made, right? That means you got to develop a portfolio. You're going to have to begin thinking about filming yourself, maybe running through some lines, especially if you want to get into theater. You can always do a Shakespeare line, or just a group of lines. You want to think about how you are going to get an agent, and then what type of agent. Is it a film agent? Is it a theater agent? Is it commercials agent? Whatever type of agent. And then you're going to have to go on auditions, and you're going to have to plan your life for that. So that means you may not be able to work during the day, and the only time you can work is in the evening. So your day is dedicated to going out on auditions. Of course, if you want to work in Hollywood, you're going to eventually have to move to LA. That means you need to begin saving money. So your plan for achieving ambitions is going to require some financial planning as well. But definitely time, definitely relocation. So the personal statement gives you an opportunity to begin thinking about your ambitions and how you are going to get there. And school is a great medium for that because it helps to process you. And then this is really considered your first assignment. So even though you have not been admitted to the institution yet or the program yet, this is really your first, it's really considered your first writing assignment. Your ability to convince the admissions team that you are the right fit is your first assignment. So you want to take it very seriously. No one likes to read a personal statement that's filled with errors. No one likes to read a personal statement where the person doesn't know what it is he or she wants to do. Sometimes you cannot have the major, but you have an idea about what it is you want to do. That needs to be conveyed. And you usually have 250 to 500 words to do that. That's the opportunity. That is your opportunity. Don't and most institutions will not allow your application to go forward without a personal statement. So this is the time for you to begin thinking about it. So the personal statement gives you an opportunity to express. It is a persuasive argument, a sales presentation, reflection of experiences, a plan for achieving ambitions, and it is considered your first assignment. So here are some different types of prompts. I usually take some time to research different types of prompts that I think might be useful for the composition classroom. So here are your basics, the scholarship application, gaps and disciplinary issues, and then of course transfer applicant, because remember, this is a personal statement for the transfer applicant. This lecture is really geared towards that because most institutions, most students who apply right before they graduate from high school, it's a different type of writing prompt. I might mention a freshman applicant writing prompt, but this is more geared towards those individuals who are at a community college and they want to transfer within the next 2 years. So here is a diversity prompt, your definition of diversity and the role it has played in your own learning and development. You know, diversity is a very hard argument to really tackle because we instantly think about diversity in terms of racial classifications, but we could also think about it in terms of gender classifications. There could also be cognitive diversity, you know, how you learn versus another way another person learns, the way you learn in one course versus another way you learn in another course. But your definition of diversity is very subjective here. And I don't think you should be penalized because you don't always think about it in terms of racial classifications. You may want to get some advice on how to look at this in terms of your definition of diversity. Regardless, you need to be able to convey what your definition is and the role it has played in your own learning and development. So autobiography, tell us about yourself, where you have been, where you feel you are going. Remember when I said that most of the writing prompts sort of have the same focus in terms of yourself, where you have been, where you feel you are going. And this means you have to know yourself, know who you are as an individual, not always know yourself in terms of how people treat you, but who you are as an individual. Are you a runner? Are you an emotional runner? And then if you are, how many times have you ran and how have you resolved this problem? If you are a writer, are you actually writing? And how many times have you written and what genres are you writing? And where do you feel you are going? Do you feel you are going into the scholarly context? Do you feel you are going into the creative writing context? Do you want to write scripts for film? Do you want to write novels, fiction or nonfiction? right? Telling us about yourself requires you knowing yourself and where you have been and where you feel you are going, because by the time you apply to these institutions with a personal statement, you are 18, 19, 20, maybe 21 years old. So you have some lived experiences. You have gone through something in your life, whether it was positive or negative. So the autobiography still has a structure of its own. And here's your freshman applicant. So just in case you are a student who is a freshman and you are wondering about whether or not on how you should create a personal statement. So describe the world you come from, for example, your family, community, or school, and tell us how your world has shaped your dreams and aspirations. The very first thing you got to look at when you look at this prompt is dreams and aspirations. It's not immediately tell us the world you come from. You have to center everything else prior to dreams and aspirations on dreams and aspirations. So your dream is to become a teacher. Your dream is to become a doctor. Your aspiration is to do a certain thing in the field, right? Solve heart problems, solve, diabetes problems or something like that. Now, once you tell us what that is, then you can describe the world you come from. So, for example, my aunt, if you wanted to solve a diabetes problem, and you look at it from your aunt being or having diabetes and struggling with it and ended up with an amputated leg or something like that, that's the world you come from. Now, how has that impacted you, or how has that had an impact on you? You have to go to her house after school and rub her leg, or help to bathe her, or help to do something to help her in her own world. And so that's the way that you can describe the world you come from. And the world is not just your mother and father, it's all of your siblings, it's all of your aunts and uncles, your whole community, your whole family, your whole school. And then how has it shaped your dreams and aspirations in terms of that one time that I helped her to get out of the bed because she couldn't, and she almost failed, really gave me insight into the struggle people have when they have diabetes. And I had to sort of solve the problem temporarily by putting a step ladder, or by just softening her fall, or something like that. It depends on what you were doing to help her how to resolve the problem. I maybe created some sort of contraption so that I could put her in it and then haul her out of the bed, and then that way she wouldn't fall. And then of course, if I wasn't there, she could do that too, to go use the restroom or get something out of the kitchen or something. So it's you thinking about that dream and aspiration, and then the world that you come from, that particular example that has shaped your understanding. And you can use that kind of prompt also in just a regular transfer applicant prompt as well. So all applicants tell us about a personal quality, talent, accomplishment, contribution, or experience that is important to you. What about this quality or accomplishment makes you proud, and how does it relate to the person you are? So again, you need to know what your personal quality, talent, accomplishment, contribution, or experience. Most importantly, you need to know your gifts and talents. If you teach, or if you write, or if you perform athletics, or whatever it is that you think you do well, or accomplishment, you did well every year for the spelling bee competition. You do a number of things well. You're very quick in how you compute math or something like that. You play an instrument. You have been a strong competitor in something. Whatever it is, tell the admissions staff committee what that personal quality, talent, or accomplishment is, what kind of contribution. And what about it makes you proud? Meaning that there were times you wanted to quit, but you found something within yourself to stay the course. And then you got over that, you kept going, got over that hump, crossed the finish line, right? And that makes you proud that you can, when you are faced with trials and tribulations and distractions, that something on the inside of you will pull at you and push you forward, and it is you using you to help you push yourself forward. So that makes you proud. And then of course that tells the admissions committee, the type of person you are, that you are not a runner, and that even if you ran initially from the problem, you reassessed your contribution and said, no, I got to finish this. So this tells the admissions people what type of person you are. So tell us about a personal quality, talent, accomplishment, contribution, experience that is important to you. What about it makes you proud? And then how does it relate to the person you are? So topic of your choice, no explicit content. So you may get a prompt, a writing prompt that requires you, that doesn't necessarily give you, definable characteristics of the prompt. But even with no explicit content, the admissions committee is still looking for structure. It is still looking for your ability to convey what it is you want, what your major is, why is it important to you, what contributions have you made, what have you learned, right? So you get to choose the topic, but you still have to present a very controlled, structured, organized way of conveying your academic experiences. So you will often get a scholarship application prompt, and most of the scholarship applications always ask about your participation in extracurricular activities. It is not necessarily asking you to list those activities as if you were just listing them on a resume. It is mostly asking you to think about your most important extracurricular activities where you served in a leadership role. That's really what it's asking of you, that you were a leader in something, and what was it that you did with that particular role? How did you influence and have an impact on people, and what were the results? So describe your participation in extracurricular activities. It sounds broad, but it's really asking you to be focused. And participation is not just you being a member of the committee. Even if you wanted to reference that and you did a lot of work as a member of a committee in your extracurricular activity, that's fine. But eventually you're going to need one that tells the reader that you took on a leadership role or you assumed a lead role in a particular activity. So describe your participation in extracurricular activities. And then what have you learned from your experience? So examples may include community service, volunteer work, employment, school clubs, sports, family, church. And, if you think about, if we look at the family aspect of these examples for a minute, if you come from a background where you have family reunions every year, or you got together the birthday party or the retirement party for your aunt or uncle or your mom or dad, to me, that's a leadership role in the family. You may not necessarily pay all the bills in the house, or you may not be the parents, but that was important that you took some time to set a goal to have an event at the house. You endured that particular goal. You put the event on, everyone was happy with it, and you completed the goal. And now you can sort of assess your contribution. What did you learn from that? That it takes time to sort of corral everybody. It takes time to schedule. It takes time to budget. And really what that is just a future position as a coordinator or supervisor or manager, because what they are concerned with is scheduling, budgeting, and supervision or supervising. So supervising, budgeting, and scheduling. And that experience with putting on an event for the family or putting on an event at your church, that's really all that is budgeting, supervising, scheduling, right? And so if you make the connection to your field, what you did while you were just in high school or something like that, between high school and your field, that's going to help a business admissions committee see that you understand just what business really is. Volunteer work, I mean, or you just volunteering all over the place, or do you have a focus? So if your focus is advocacy work and you volunteered at a homeless shelter, it's easier to tailor your application that way, right? And then if you later decided to take a employment position there or something like that, and then you have done community service, maybe put on maybe you had some sort of community project that you created in terms of a kitchen for the homeless, or like a book drive or something like that for the homeless, or you went to the homeless shelters and gave a presentation, anything like that suggests that you care about the thing that you are trying to become by starting to now work in it and do something with it. So what have you learned, of course, would be what new insight did you gain as a result of being exposed and as a result of engaging with that particular thing that you did. So, and it can be school clubs, it can be sports, right? You might have had an injury and you had to go through the healing process and recovery process, and then you are back on the field. So what have you learned from your experiences? And then describe your academic career short-term and long-term goals. Gone are the days where you could sort of float around on a feather or let the wind just kind of lead you to somewhere. Today, knowledge is getting very specific. Most, if not all, companies have to deal with, technology. It's not like it's an option anymore. Now that social media has taken over the branding objectives of companies and things like that, you have to have some sort of social media savvy, not be necessarily expert, but be a user of social media, post. And even people who work for companies, those employers expect their employees to post on social media, basically advocating for the brand. And so you have to not only think about your immediate academic goals and your immediate and your career goals, and then think about it in terms of long term. You have to take into consideration web designing and having a portfolio, a digital portfolio of things you do. Also being able to create sort of like little teaching videos, because now even companies are getting into or adding an academy tab, right, to their website so they can sell learning. Everything now is about instructional design. Little companies are now becoming say like a mini college or something like that, because they want to get into the online learning game. So these are goals that you also have to consider. It can be kind of overwhelming, but this is where the world is taking us. And so when you think about your academic career, short-term and long-term goals, you may want to take a course in technology, and any kind of technology course, digital imaging or web design, even if it's just an introductory course or something like that. So the next scholarship application, who in your life has been your biggest influence and why? A lot of times people like to go for the parent, the mother or the father. And there's nothing wrong with a parent being and influence in your life, and providing the reasons why that is important. But you also have to know your parent. You just can't say my mama was a good mama because she was just a good mama. What is it about your mother or your father that is a big influence? Did they keep you all together? Did your mother work? What type of work does she do? How has that work had an impact on you? Were there some times she wasn't at home and you needed her? And then there were some times she was at home and you needed her. And then there were some times she was there and you didn't need her, right? Is your mom a nurse? What have you seen her in action? Have you shadowed her? Have you volunteered to be there and help her with something? How does your mother guide the home? Is your mother a single mother, or your father? What does your father do? So you have to know what they do in order for you to be able to convey the type of influence they have had on your life, not just the fact that they are a good mama and a good papa. Describe how you have demonstrated leadership ability both in and out of school. And that's why I say those questions that they ask you are really about leadership. You don't necessarily have to be the boss of everything, but if you went to the leader of the group and said, I will take this on as a responsibility, now tell us what you did, what was the process, what did you learn from it, and how did it support the larger objective of trying to get something done. So these are really leadership questions that they ask you. So then we want to look at gaps and disciplinary issues, especially if you are a high school student, but you may get these questions as well as a transfer student. So educational gaps, please attach a detailed explanation of any gaps in your education or training listed on this application. A gap in your education is not if you decided to wait a year or two after high school to go to college. That's not a gap. The gap begins when you decide to enroll in a college and then for one semester, and then you decide to wait 2 or 3 semesters because of a job situation and then return. That's a true gap. If we were looking at the direct high school situation, say for instance 9th and 10th or 11th and 12th grade, and there was a medical issue that you had any of those times within those high school years, and you had a big gap, that would be considered a gap that you should explore within your statement. But the true gaps are when you first start community college or you first start university and you go the first 2 semesters of the first year and then you sit out the second year or you sit out a semester. Why did you do that? Was it due to work? Was it due to a health issue? Was it due to relocating to another state, changing colleges, or something like that? So they will want you to provide a detailed explanation of any gaps in your education or training. Now, here's a violation that when I give this lecture, I didn't even realize until I had to read it in class. But I'm going to read it here. Have you ever been found responsible for a disciplinary violation at an educational institution you have attended from 9th grade forward, whether related to academic misconduct or behavioral misconduct that resulted in a disciplinary action? These actions could include, but are not limited to, probation, suspension, removal, or dismissal, or expulsion from the institution. And I thought it was very interesting that the prompt is asking you or probing your behavior from 9th grade forward. So there's this expectation that you should know how to act right when you are in the 9th grade and forward. That you can't be the type of person who gets into trouble 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, right? You can't really have that record. And if you do, you're really going to have to explain your behavior. Maybe a parent died. Maybe you had a learning disability and you just kind of reacted. there has to be some kind of reason why you were acting up. That's how we will see it. You were acting up from ninth grade on, right? And then if you dropped out of high school, say for instance, you dropped out by the 10th grade, and then you decided to return at the end of the 11th or 12th grade, that would be considered a gap. It wouldn't necessarily be a disciplinary violation or anything like that, but it would be something that you would have to answer for. And don't get discouraged, we make these decisions, all the time. We just have to convey how we learned from them. So that's interesting that they would ask from ninth grade forward. And then it's asking you to please attach a personal statement or explanation if answering yes to any of these questions. In this part of the application process, if there is a disciplinary violation, you have to provide a personal statement. You cannot skip this part of the application process because you run the risk of the application being deemed incomplete. And it can only be incomplete for so long, to the point that the admissions committee decide to put your application on hold until you do. And if you don't by a certain date, they could deny your application. So educational gaps and violations are very important to consider when you are going through your application. So let's look at the transfer applicant prompt that I usually use, and I get it from the UC admissions website. It's one that I noticed that a lot of institutions use, some variation of it. So the prompt is essentially, what is your intended major? Discuss how your interest in the subject developed, and describe any experience you have had in the field, such as volunteer work, internships and employment, participation in student organizations and activities, and what you have gained from your involvement. And the most important aspect of the writing prompt, any writing prompt you get, whether you are a transfer applicant, a freshman applicant, or you've already been admitted into the institution and you are writing based upon a prompt, you want to look at your coordinating conjunctions. And your coordinating conjunctions are your fanboys. So those are your for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And so you see here we have two coordinating conjunctions, the same one, of course, two coordinating conjunctions within the applicant prompt, and here. And what that suggests to you is that it requires you to do two things. It requires you to discuss, and it requires you to describe. And then it also requires you to tell us what you have gained from your involvement. So we're going to get into a bit of an analysis of this prompt. So let's look at the analysis. What is your intended major? This is the anchor. This is not asking you what your field is in terms of your professional field yet. So if your major is accounting, it's not asking you that you want to become an accountant. That may be implied, that may be obvious, but you have to tailor the personal statement based upon the writing prompt. And so what is your intended major? My major is accounting, not accountant. My major is business. And you can also offer a specialization. So my major is business with a specialization in accounting. Or my major is business with a specialization in finance or something like that, right? But that is your anchor. That's why when you write a paper in an English class, you want to really look at the writing prompt. The prompt, the anchor of the prompt, because that's going to help to inform what your thesis will be. So what is your intended major? So let's discuss and describe. So for example, discuss how your interest in the subject developed, and describe any experience you have had in the field, such as volunteer work, internships, employment, participation in student organizations and activities. So discuss, there is a difference between discuss and describe. Discuss is basically suggesting a conversation. That you're going to have a conversation with the committee. And usually you have an admissions person from the main admissions department. Then you may have another person, maybe like a registrar, and then you will have someone from your major department there, a faculty member. It could be the chair of the department as well. But how you speak or how you speak within your writing really tells that admissions team, especially the major department faculty, if you know what you're talking about. If you're talking about, I just want to save the world, we all know that you're not going to be able to do that within a 4-year program. It could be something that you gain through coursework to help you sort of support that objective, but saving the world is too large of a goal. It's too big of a goal that has no real limits to it. And you do have to put limits on yourself. You can't save the world, right? You can save an aspect of the world, say like you want to resolve homelessness or you want to resolve food hunger or something like that. But you would die trying to go from continent to continent, country to country, state to state to try to save the world, right? So you would have to focus your efforts. Your efforts may be, I'm interested in immigration. I would like to do something with the Dreamers in DACA, and I would like to help students who are interested in education with scholarship money or something like that, or some kind of internship or whatever. So that means I'm going to have an organization that helps immigration or something. And so eventually I'm going to, right now my major is pre-law, and then eventually I'm going to get into becoming a lawyer and focusing my efforts on immigration, right? So then what are you doing? Now you want to discuss how your interest in the subject developed. Well, I had a friend who had immigration problems. We were long-term friends, and I had to lose her because she was deported, and all she wanted to do was go to college or something like that. And I couldn't help her, and I felt helpless. And that's how my interest really developed. Of course, I also spent time in her country, and I just saw among the people who were interested in traveling to America for a better for better opportunities and education, and all of that has really informed why I should go into immigration. And then, of course, I did some time as a volunteer. So discussing is basically having that discussion that people generally know about. You really cannot discuss something within a personal statement that is not sort of a mimicry of what people already know about that particular thing. Now, you may come into the field and do something different later, but when you are initially creating or responding to the applicant prompt, you want to make sure that they understand that what you are discussing reveals your research into the field and what you would have to do, and how you will how will you get that done, right? Understanding and suggesting to the admissions committee that that even though you have the eagerness to want to save the world, you know that you can only do that one town at a time, one city at a time, one organization at a time. So they want to hear your limits as well. So then you want to move into that experience you have. So if you are so interested in immigration, what have you been doing to date, right? Have you been helping people on your own fill out applications and things like that? You have friends who are foreigners, and they are asking you for help with a particular application, right? How do I fill out that application. So have you been almost like a mini consultant, a mini sort of person who has sat down, helped them to help to explain what's going on? You can read some of the criterion that they have to adhere to. You've looked at a few policy documents, and somehow it just comes naturally to you to be able to explain it. It's like you pick it up. And so that's also important too. Your volunteer work, your internships, your employment. It doesn't make any sense that you want to get into the medical field, for example, and have never volunteered at a hospital. And usually hospitals don't require you to do 8-hour shifts or anything like that. They require you to do a certain amount of hours per week for maybe 1 to 2 years. But you saying that you want to become something and you've never taken the time to volunteer or participate, if you want to get into accounting and you are on student government, it makes sense for you to become a treasurer or any person dealing with the money on that committee. So it does make a big difference that you say you want to become something and you have taken the time to embrace it in some form of fashion, volunteer working or something like that. And you got to be able to describe that. So we're not asking for a list of experiences. You take 1 to 3 experiences and explore it. So you discuss how your interest in the subject developed, or the career, the major, the field, and then now you take 1 to 3 experiences of that particular interest and explore it. So that's discuss and describe. And what you have gained from your involvement. And this is learning. What have you learned from engaging, which is your process, and then engagement, which is your progress? And so there's that second and there. You have that second and there. And you want to take some time because what is it that you didn't know that you now know as a result of being involved? Okay, I didn't really know that I thought that people were homeless because they didn't want to work. That's the obvious statement people always make. I think it's a very biased, prejudiced type statement, very prideful statement, but it could also be a true statement. What I realized is that there are some people who are homeless due to eviction or due to losing their jobs or something like that. As a result of this pandemic, you're going to get a lot of folks who are being evicted and losing jobs and not having anywhere to go because of the way the pandemic changed the economy. You can't say that person is lazy because things are changed as a result of the pandemic. So that's an example of something. If you wanted to get into homelessness, homeless advocacy, and you are thinking about those particular statements you might make, to yourself, not really understanding what the problem is, and then you decided to take a course, and then that course led to some sort of experience, volunteering or something like that, and then you gain new insight that some people are homeless not necessarily because of eviction, but because they were paroled, and so once they paroled and they don't have any real job experience, it's hard for them to find a job. Then they are moving from place to place, right? Because they may be having issues or something like that. Some people are very impatient if you don't hurry up and find a job within a week. But now you have this record and it's hard for you to find. So there are a number of reasons, and the engagement process really suggests that you need to get involved with what you think is a problem to see what is going on so you can define it better in your head. And then you think about solutions to the problem and how have you contributed to that. So this is a very important prompt, because it's not just the transfer application prompt from community college to university setting, but it has very much life implications as well. It has career implications. And so that's what I want you to think about. So planning to write what is special and unique about you. So we have to go through the planning process. There are some questions to consider when you are thinking about your specialness or your uniqueness. And so one of the questions that you want to think about as you plan your personal statement, as well as even just you yourself, because you may be asked a variation of this question you see here in an interview, and it's usually disguised as why should we hire you, right? What is special, unique, distinctive, and or impressive about you or your life story? And the first thing we often want to go to, that we use as a go-to, is the fact that we grew up in poverty. We grew up with a single mother or a single father. Our family didn't have much. I'm the first one to go to college. I'm the first one to even think about anything else other than, going to jail or something like that. So we have a lot of go-to statements that we use to sort of describe or suggest something about our specialness or our uniqueness or our distinctiveness. And those statements, although true and although have a great impact upon the reader, they are sort of too status quo to be meaningful today. They were meaningful when you didn't have a lot of Black people going to college, for example, or you didn't have a lot of women going to college, or they couldn't get into college or something like that, because colleges were for all men, and then colleges were for all white people or the dominant society, and so Black people had to create their own college or something like that. Those types of examples where you have many more people, gender, race, ethnicity, everything now, they can all go to college. It's not such a big deal anymore. And now that you can get a college student loan, you can get scholarships or whatever, it makes it even easier to go to college. So that's no longer really a special, unique, distinctive, impressive quality about you and your life story. You need something that's going to really jump off at the page. It makes a big difference if you grew up homeless, if you grew up in homeless shelters. I'm not saying lie or anything like that, but I'm saying if that is really your story and how you had to battle living in a shelter and trying to study your books and going to school and having to return back at a certain time because the shelter only takes you back at a certain time, and wondering if you are going to have a place to stay that night, and still reading your books and things. That is something that is impressive about your life story. The special, unique, distinctive quality about yourself could be that you are a person who is disciplined regardless of the context, regardless of the surroundings, that you feel no matter what, it is important to read that book, that it doesn't matter that you're homeless, and that the fact that you are homeless should hinder you or hinders you or should stop you. You know that the only way to get out of where you are is through reading, or is through doing your homework, or going to school, or essentially moving forward, even though you are currently in a setback. And so that is something that could be special, unique, distinctive about you as a person, and your background, how you kept going, could be something impressive about your life story. Now you can address gifts and talents that you might have, that you used as a way to push you forward, that you thought to yourself that even though I have this gift for writing and I'm homeless right now, I still thought it was necessary to keep journaling in my book. I still thought it was important to keep moving in that way because I still got to get the practice. Now, sometimes we don't always have the insight at that time. We just do what we need to do in that moment. But now you are reflecting and you have 2 years to think about that particular part, that particular time in your life. Now you are reflecting on it and saying, oh, that was a very special time in my life, and what I did with that time was important. So that there's larger implications that regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the hindrances, I'm still going to do what I need to do to move myself forward, to support the larger organization when confronted with challenges, that I basically have a growth mindset, and that even though I am faced with challenges and that they continue to perpetually push me back, it's not the end of me yet, that I still have a lot to give, I still have a lot to do, and I'm going to do it. So you have to determine what is special, unique, distinctive, and or impressive about you or your life story. And that's going to take some reflection time. That's why trying to write the personal statement the night before is going to hinder the reflection process you need. So that's something also to think about. What details of your life, personal or family problems, history, people, or events that have shaped you or influenced your goals might help the committee better understand you or help set you apart from other applicants. So once you have addressed the special, the unique, the distinctive, or impressive, then I think it's much easier to bring in the fact that you grew up in poverty, or you grew up in a single family home, or you grew up with a father who was absentee or a mother who was absentee. Your grandmother took care of you. You had to move a lot because of finances. You've been to 10 schools in 5 years or something like that. Then that is something, because then if you tell them that you still made good grades even though you had to go through all those life challenges, that is something really unique about you, because that lets them know that you do well in trouble. You sure, you need to live in non-chaotic environments, but you do have a good aptitude for doing well in emergency-based situations, which might lend credibility to you wanting to become a doctor and work in the ER, emergency room. And so now we see that there's a childhood background that sort of revealed or had that implied that you were a good fit for that type of environment because of your upbringing. And now we sort of see why you are a good fit for the medical field specialty of working in the ER, because you do well in chaotic environments. So again, that's going to take some time to really think about. It's not something that comes automatically to you, but watch your speech. Watch how you often talk about yourself to other people. Yeah, I do well and stuff like that. Some people don't like to do that, but I do well in that. Pay attention to when you say things like that, and then note the place that you do well in, and make that part of your personal statement planning. How have you learned about this field? Through classes, readings, seminars, work, or other experiences or conversations with people already in the field. So again, classwork is going to always be a great indicator, especially how well you do in those classes. Sometimes you don't always do well at the very beginning because you're just really unsure about what it is you really want to do, even though you are in it and you just continue in it. But once you really get a good understanding of this is the thing for me, you should be pulling A's and A minuses in your major, in your classes. So the more the classes you take and the better you do in those classes should also reinforce your conviction. The readings, what are some readings? Are you reading up in the field? Because it's theory plus practice, right? Theory plus application. And so if this is something that is interesting, you should be reading articles, you should be reading journal articles, you should be taking seminars, you should also be working, whether it's volunteer or paid. And then conversations with people. You should always think about conducting an informational interview with someone who's already in the field, because they're going to tell you really what to expect. I always tell my students who want to get into the same fields as their parents, take your parent out on some sort of cafe stop or something like that. Buy them a coffee and let them talk about their job. And you're going to see more in their heart and in their minds about their job and how they think about their job and their field just in that coffee stop alone. Go out and go on a hike with them, or something like that, and you'll see if they really love their field. They may complain, like all people complain about their jobs, but if they say, I can't do without this job, I got to have it, I have to, like for me, teaching makes me sane. It keeps me sane, right? I have to have teaching. I will be lost without it. Doesn't mean that I don't have another life. Doesn't mean that I don't have other things that I'm interested in. But it does make a big difference that I have to be responsible for souls in the classroom, that I have to be responsible for people who are making transitions in life, which I have struggled with my own self making transitions in life. And I usually teach where I failed or where I struggled. And so it makes a big difference when you have engaged the field and somehow had conversations with people and really learned about it, so that it is clear when you are writing a personal statement. If you have worked a lot during your college years, what have you learned? So that's leadership or managerial skills. And how has that work contributed to your growth? So there's always likely an opportunity to take on a leadership role, but then sometimes it's not always a good idea to take on a leadership role if you're not ready. And there's nothing wrong with not being ready for something at that moment. Sometimes you just have to say no to it. There have been some opportunities that folks have wanted me to take on a leadership role, but I wasn't ready. But then there was an opportunity that they asked me to do, and I took it without really thinking, and it turned out that I really wasn't ready, and I ended up quitting it before my time. And that one opportunity is something that I regret to this day, but I now know, I have learned from it not to take on something that I haven't prepared for. That was my learning experience. That was my insight, because even if someone sort of prompts you to take on a responsibility, if you prepared for it in some kind of way, for example, through classes, reading, seminars, work, or other experiences, or conversations with people, you may start it afraid, but you will tap into your knowledge base and think about it, and then take the first step and keep going after that. When you don't have anything at all in your knowledge base, that's what makes it harder to be effective. That's why you have a lot of people who take on roles all the time. They don't have anything in their knowledge base, and they think they are being effective and productive, but they're really messing things up. It doesn't look like that because it looks like success in the moment, and everyone liking them looks like validation, but it really isn't success, and it's going to eventually take a toll on the people around them as well as that person, and that it's going to affect them negatively. So it's much better to make sure that you have what you need. Go through the preparation of learning new knowledge before you take on a new responsibility, and that's what leadership or managerial skills mean here. That what have you learned? And you could always talk about the fact that you took on something and you missed the opportunity to learn from it, and then later when you had another opportunity to take on that leadership role, you decided to learn first and then take on the role later. So that's part of your growth process. And then what are your career goals? So career goals, it's hard for you to know what they are if you don't know the field and the general nature of the field. And we're going to get into a sample personal statement later that really reveals that the writer took some time to research the field before he or she wrote that particular personal statement. And so career goals, you can find a lot of that information, and we'll go over that through the major department site. You can talk with someone who's in the field, And you can get a lot of information from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we will talk about that as well. But you do want to have some idea about your industry, about the field itself. So if you're going into the accounting field and you want to become an accountant, what type of accountant? Is that a general accountant, a staff accountant, a financial accountant, a tax accountant, cost accountant, managerial accounting? What kind of accountant do you want to be? What industry? Is it nonprofit? Is it for-profit? Is it government-based, right? Where do you envision yourself? And do you want to get into private practice? Do you want to get into consulting? Do you want to work with celebrities, right? So these are questions that you want to think about. And these are the questions that we don't always address because we are afraid to say what we really want. So we just hide it up under some rug. But if you know, like I know this one actor, his name is Laz Alonso. He knew from the time he was young that he wanted to become an actor, and you see him as an actor. So he allocated all of his efforts towards acting and going out for roles and then acting in those roles and maybe taking some classes here and there and getting into major roles. And so you don't see him really doing too much of anything else other than his regular volunteering and philanthropy or something like that, right? But that was his career goal, and he knew that way before he went to college. And so the things that we are often afraid to say, we need to just go on ahead and say them, put it down on paper or put it on a wall or something like that, and begin just thinking about it, at least reflecting on it and taking the first step to allocate your effort towards accomplishing the first level. So career goals, I do believe you have some idea. I think you just often are afraid to say them because, I don't know, you don't want to offend a parent. You don't want to offend a teacher. You don't want to offend a friend or something like that. The person who says, girl, you can't do all that, leave that alone. Or the guy who says, oh, you ain't got to worry about that. Just go get a simple job. That's the person that you got to be careful about. Always be careful about, because they're going to hinder your process. And whether or not you're supposed to do that thing, it is still your process. Here are two additional questions to consider. So the first one is, when did you become interested in this field, and what have you learned about it and about yourself that has further stimulated your interest and reinforced your conviction that you are well suited to this field? And then, of course, what insights have you gained? When you look at a question that begins with when, it usually speaks to timeline. So you didn't all of a sudden become interested in this field the day you woke up. Sometimes there's some sort of implication of interest in the field, maybe when you were a child, maybe you were shadowing a person who is actually in the field, and something about what they are doing triggered something in you. So, for example, I use this all the time, that there were indications that I was supposed to become a teacher when I was young. I used to line up all my bears and dolls and, teach them something. And I've discussed this already. And so that's something that you want to think about. What was it in your childhood that gave off some sort of indication that you were to become this thing, or you were interested in this particular field? So people usually who want to become doctors, there's an indication of this much earlier. A lot of times kids or parents will gift their kids with a play stethoscope and a little white jacket, and the child will take the temperature of the bears or the dolls or the GI Joes, and even go so far as to take the temperature of the parents and sort of play doctor. And a lot of times that is an implication or an indication that is something that you are supposed to do, or something that is of interest to you. And then what have you learned about it and about yourself that has further stimulated your interest, well, that is predicated on you engaging. So once you move out of the home and you have taken the temperature of all the bears and the dogs and the parents and your siblings, you should now begin thinking about how you can engage aspects of the medical field while you are, say, in high school or even in middle school. Sometimes they have summer camps. Schools have summer camps for those individuals who want to get into the medical field. Usually if you attend a magnet school or just a special gifted school, a lot of times you would be exposed to certain aspects of the medical field. I do know that students can, through cooperative education, go to school half a day and go to work half a day, or attend community college half a day, or just attend community college while they are in high school as well, and that exposes them. So as soon as you know or have some idea that you might want to become this thing, whatever this thing is in this field, you should begin engaging the field, right? So that whatever you do feels like validation that this is the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And then you begin thinking about your patience for it, your temperance for it, your tolerance for it, and your personality for it. And that helps to determine if you are well suited to this field. And what insights have you gained is just essentially understanding that theory must be coupled with practice, that you just don't go and practice something without understanding what it actually means. So here's some general advice, what admissions officers think. So one of the advice that admissions officers say to applicants when they give sort of like a presentation or seminar or something like that, answer the question that is asked. Don't use the same statement for all applications as well. This is something that I basically use also as a way to assess and provide feedback to my students' writing. That there is an anchor, there is the prompt, and there's an anchor to the prompt, and that you're supposed to write on that. You don't write on every other topic other than that. You write on the topic that is presented to you, right, in terms of the writing assignment. So answer the question that is asked. That means that there are certain questions that many schools might ask and ask in variation. But when your admissions department is asking you a certain type of question, you really got to take some time to look at that question. You really got to take some time to think about what is it that they want me to respond to. Why do they want me to respond? And so you want to answer the question that is asked, and that includes tailoring the question to that department or to that institution at large, meaning don't use the same personal statement for all your applications because it may not apply. Tell a story, so don't bore the admissions committee. Craft your statement so that it is fresh, lively, and different. Distinguish yourself through your own story. It's hard not to bore someone. Boring someone could be very subjective. I mean, if you are bored reading personal statements as an admissions committee member, you probably shouldn't be on that admissions committee, because you're supposed to really read every personal statement without that kind of bias that I'm going to be bored, right? So you do want to be careful, but you don't want to tell it in such a way that is sort of like you trying to please the reader, right? You're trying to tell them whatever you think they want to hear. Just tell your story. Just tell your story, and you should know your story individually to be able to tell it. Be specific, so don't state that you would make an excellent doctor or lawyer. Back up your contentions with specific reasons. Your desire to become X should be logical and should emerge as the logical conclusion to your story. So it goes back to that timeline that you started out visiting your mom and volunteering, and then you started, getting involved and taking courses, and then you did little summer camps or something like that for students who want to become doctors or lawyers or whatever, and you gain some insight as a result of engaging in the environment. And so it's something on the inside of you that you have the compassion for patients, you have the skill, knowledge, or something like that based upon what you have learned to date. And so then you realize that you are suitable for becoming a doctor in a particular field. I really want to work with kids as a doctor, as a pediatrician. I really want to work with women who have struggled with hysterectomies or something, who has struggled with miscarriages or whatever. And so then by the time you get to a statement like, I think I'm suitable for the field, not necessarily saying I would make an excellent doctor or lawyer. You don't know that yet, right? Because you are not a doctor or a lawyer, but you feel like you are suitable for the field. Then there's a logical conclusion that we can come to based upon your grades, based upon you engaging in the field, based upon you being a good competitor, right? You testing well. And now we can draw that as a logical conclusion. Concentrate on the opening paragraph, so grab the reader's attention, set the framework for the rest of the personal statement. So it always helps that you have an anecdote that kind of relates to what you are going to discuss within the personal statement. How you grab the reader's attention really does make a big difference. I think in some ways you can be a little funny, be a little comical, but you don't want to come off as a person in writing who doesn't take the seriousness of writing the personal statement to heart. The whole thing can't be about being funny, right? You could always have a nice quote that begins that personal statement, something that has always stuck with you from a famous author or famous, celebrity person or something like that. I think that's always useful, but you definitely don't want their quote to take over your paper. So you want to be careful about how you insert quotes, how you insert other people's words, because it is your personal statement. Tell what you know, so detail your interest and experience in your particular field, as well as some knowledge of the field. Too many people graduate with no knowledge in the field they hope to enter. Refer to experiences, classes, conversations with people in the field, books you've read, seminars attended, or other specific material. And this is why I lecture and administer the personal statement, as well as the accompanying annotated bibliography to look up your future institutions as well as your intended career field, because this gives students an opportunity to begin thinking about their field and taking 2 to 4 years to wonder if this is the right field for them based upon their engagement. And that is very important, that too many people graduate with no knowledge in the field they hope to enter. I did benefit from being a graduate TA when I was in graduate school. But there are a lot of things that I feel like I still didn't know until much later, until I got out and had to work in the field. And then there's still some things I feel like I still don't know. And so I knew enough to know that I needed to get my master's in order to be able to teach at the community college level. You usually need a PhD, and I don't have that yet, and I will get it to teach at the university level, or at least be in a doctoral program at the dissertation stage. So there are some things I knew, I understood, but then there are some things that they didn't really teach us in graduate school, teaching about how to teach the composition classroom, because we were mainly taught how to analyze the literary text. So my composition teaching is all self-trained. I had to actually train myself and read and research and read scholarly material and do professional development and learn how to teach composition, first year composition. And so it would have benefited me had I taken a class, but that was in another department, the teaching of writing class, that I didn't get a chance to take, but I wish I would have now. So it is true that you can graduate with no knowledge in the field that you hope to enter. But then there's some things you can graduate with, but you just tend to struggle with much later. So it does make a difference that you do well in your classes, you do well in engaging the field in some kind of way, volunteer or something, so that you're not left with no skills at all. Write well, so do some research, be meticulous, proofread your essay, avoid cliches, avoid conversational language, adhere to word limit. Let me speak on adhere to word limit first, because this is very important. If the limit is 500 words, 1 to 2 pages, if you have 3 pages, it is likely that the admissions committee would throw it out. And that's because before your personal statement or application even hits the admissions committee, it's all the people at the front office, the students, the student assistants, the staff. They are the ones who read your work first, or they go through the application process to make sure that everything is there to check you off and move your application forward. And so the student assistant is often instructed by the director to chunk anything that doesn't fulfill the application requirements, right? Especially page limit. So you want to adhere to page limit. Proofreading, of course, is always important because it's how you present yourself. Remember, the personal statement is like a sales presentation. So you definitely want to avoid conversational language, meaning how you talk to your friend is not the same way you need to write within the personal statement. You are not having a conversation with a friend like you are talking to somebody on the phone. And so you want to make sure that you frame the language for professionalism. So that means you definitely will need to avoid cliches. Your whole paper should not be about cliches. And then, of course, do your research. Your research meaning the research on the institution itself, the department itself. Does it offer what you need for where you want to go? So here is some general advice. There's a difference between standard rules and then common pitfalls. So one of the standard rules is that you will often hear an admissions officer posit: strive for depth, not breadth. Narrow your focus to key things and experiences. And this goes back to when I was discussing the one to three experiences versus just listing things off. I just say it like this: some departments will require a resume, and so on the resume you already list your experiences, but you don't get a chance to explore them through analysis. So the time that you get to do that then is within the personal statement, and that's why you have a limited context. You only have 250 to 500 words to sort of express your interest in that particular major field as well as that school. So you want to take some time just to take one to either 2 experiences and explore them with some depth, or 3 experiences and explore them with a little bit of less depth. But breadth in this way, in this context, would be you taking all of your experiences and just basically listing them and taking up the whole paper, the whole personal statement context to do that, when that's really not going to accomplish anything, because remember, the admissions committee already has access to your resume as well. So strive for depth, not breadth. Evaluate your experiences rather than describe them. So in other words, take some time to sort of be critical of what it is you learned as a result of being of engaging in those experiences, right? That evaluation is you being critical, looking at the usefulness of that experience. That I needed to do that internship because there's a lot I didn't know about the field, and doing that internship really informed me, and it informed me of the work ethic that I need to build in order to sustain myself in that field. So the internship or the volunteer experiences or the conversations that I had with someone in the field really helped to illuminate the fact that I am not as competitive as I thought I was, and that I need to work on my competitiveness, or I don't really have as much of the work ethic, or I haven't built a sustainable work ethic yet. So that means I really need to stay on the task of still going to school, but engaging the field through internships and volunteer experiences, so that I can continue to build and sustain the capacity to work at that level. So that's you evaluating your experiences. That's why it's very important to engage the field through some volunteer work. Like if you wanted to be a nurse and you shadowed your mother as a volunteer for her, and you saw what she had to go through. It wasn't just a skill set that she had to know and apply, but she had to be kind to patients. You know, she had to be patient with patients who were being rude and nasty to her. She had to stand on her feet all day. She had to make sure she ate something. Had to make um, rested when she needed to rest, take her breaks, things like that. There's a lot that you learn in engaging the workforce, engaging your potential field, your career intended objective. So then you can evaluate and look back and reflect on, okay, it's just a lot I didn't know, so I need to begin thinking about that now. And then address the school's unique features that interest you. So, this kind of goes back to that statement about, I would make an excellent doctor or lawyer, but you don't really know that because you are not an excellent doctor or lawyer yet. But you don't say, I think the school will be the best school for me, without really giving an example of that. So that means for your field, what is needed? If you are a computer programmer, or you are getting into computer science, you need a really good computer lab to do the types of programs, to run the types of programs that you need to run as a student, and have the capacity. So it matters that the school that you are interested in has a world-renowned computer lab, or has the capacity for the things that you want to do. If you are in an athletic program, it matters that school is a number one school for that particular athletics field or context or domain, especially if you want to go pro. So addressing the school's unique features also means calling attention to the coach, the person who's coaching that team, who has won many of his games, and has winning seasons, and is a good coach in terms of encouraging his or her players. That's also important. So you have to figure out what the unique features are specific to um, your field, your intended field, correct? Intended field objective, career objective, and then also look at the faculty who you think you might want to work with. A common pitfall is when applicants repeat information, right? That remember, again, you are already going to submit a resume, so you don't necessarily need to repeat everything that's on a resume. You take 1 to 2 to 3 experiences and just expound on them. Do not preach to your reader, express opinions, but objectively. So this is really specific to those individuals who want to be advocates, racial injustice advocates, or homeless, chronic homelessness advocates, or any other type of immigration advocates, and you can feel the language in that the applicant's personal statement, using the conditional verb should, you know, and it reads kind of preachy that institutions should be doing this, institutions should be doing that, and you are there to learn, not preach to the people who are there. Your goal is to learn from the faculty members, from the school itself, from the administration, from the knowledge books, the books that you're going to read. You are there to learn. So that's why you want to be careful about preachy language. And then do not discuss money as a motivator, because then remember, they are wanting you to become contributors to the field. That's why institutions and departments tend to be gatekeepers, especially doctoral programs. And so if you are discussing money as a motivator, that means you don't really want to become a contributor. And they want the legacy of the institution as well as the degree program to continue on. And so if all you want is to take money from it, it's going to affect the legacy of that institution as well as that program as well as that field. So never discuss money as a motivator. So admissions representatives will often say that the mistake people make most often is not to look at what the questions are asking. Some people prepare generic statements because they are applying to more than one school, and it is a lot of work to do a personal essay for each school. But that's why each school, each program, each institution, each faculty, they may have been taught, sort of like the same way, but their application of knowledge might be a lot different. And so you want to tailor your applications. Now, you may have a system like the University of California system, or University of Texas system, or University of whatever that state is, that you could use that same personal statement as an admissions application. You can use that same personal statement. But when you get to the department itself or the scholarship application, you're going to have to write a different statement. So that's why you want to make sure that you are not using the exact same statement for everything. On the other hand, generic statements detract from the applicant when we realize that we're one of 6 schools and the applicant is saying the same thing to each and every school, despite the fact that there are critical differences between the kinds of schools they may be applying to. That's why that's why you want to tailor it based upon the school's unique features. What is it that the school offers? What is it that school number 1 offers that is different from school number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5? So you can take some of the language that you create for the personal statement in terms of exploring your experiences and make it sort of generic to all of the statements, but you definitely want to tailor based upon the school's unique features, and also tailor the statement to apply to that. So that's why that's important as well. Students do not take the time. They underestimate the kind of attention that is paid to these essays. Take a look at what the essays asks and deal with those issues articulately and honestly. At least 2 and sometimes 3 people read each essay. I read them to make the final decision. And this is the case when the application goes through the admissions process. You have all of your reviewers there, but once it clears admissions, like the registrar, the transcript evaluator, those processes, it goes directly to the department, and that's usually a committee there, and it's a chair and maybe a few faculty members. And so all of the faculty members, I think, have to pass that particular application. And when there is a problem, sometimes you need 2 people might pass it, but 1 person might not. 1 faculty member might not. So that's why it's important, because that deciding vote is either going to say yes or no. And it's hard to know what they're thinking, but it's much easier if you contact them directly and just have a conversation with a potential faculty member you think you might want to work with to get a sense of how they think. They can't tell you what to put in the application because it will be biased, right? And I don't think they can really recommend you unless you are a student who used to attend there and you need a recommendation letter to the graduate program. That's what I had. But other than that, you are coming in as fresh, new to their eyes. That's why it's kind of important that you do reach out to faculty members, because by the time they get your application, they will be so familiar with you that they say, oh yeah, I know him. He's a good candidate for our program. I'm going to give him a pass. Sure, I think he'd be a good fit. So here's a sample personal statement that I want to go over. We're going to analyze it using the transfer applicant prompt, and then here's the sample personal statement. So it's a 4-paragraph statement, and I'm going to look at each paragraph. And the first paragraph is essentially introducing the anchor. So my interest in science dates back to my years in high school, where I excelled in physics, chemistry, and math. When I was a senior, I took a first-year calculus course at a local college. Such an advanced level class was not available in high school, and earned an A. It seemed only logical that I pursue a career in electrical engineering. So he's giving you timeline. Remember the timeline. He's giving you timeline that he started his timeline in science in high school. And he did so well and tested so well that he was able to get into a local college with a calculus course. So now we see how he logically gets to this basically anchor or thesis that it seemed only logical that I pursue a career in electrical engineering. Now, of course, if you're going to use the word logical, you're going to have a little bit more steps than that. But, for the limits that he has in writing the personal statement and the word count, this is what we get, and it's a very good opening. So again, timeline, engagement. He completed courses in physics, chemistry, and math, even taking a college level course in calculus, which was not available in high school, earning an A, and then pursuing a career in electrical engineering. That's his anchor. That's his thesis. Now he needs to persuade us on this. That is not just the timeline, that every paragraph after this, every example he uses after this will have to support this anchor or this thesis that electrical engineering is a suitable career for him. So now he's involving himself in the major. When I began my undergraduate career, I had the opportunity to be exposed to the full range of engineering courses, all of which tended to reinforce and solidify my intense interest in engineering. I've also had the opportunity to study a number of subjects in the humanities, and they have been both enjoyable and enlightening, providing me with a new and different perspective on the world in which we live. So there's some involvement in the major, meaning that as soon as you know what your major is, you shouldn't take a year to say, okay, I'm just going to take a year off and do my major courses later. No, you should begin thinking about and engaging in your engineering courses, so you need that continued validation to reinforce your conviction that this is the right place for you. Mentioning the humanities aspect of this in connection to involvement in a major, the reason why they do that is because you want a writing ability. You want to be able to critically think and critically think in your report writing that might be required for engineering courses. And so English and humanities gives you that opportunity to learn how to write, communicate, and critically think on topics. But we definitely have something in here that tells us that he's involving himself in the major. He has a specialization. Now remember, it was electrical engineering as the main major, and so he's going through the different aspects of that electrical engineering into specialization. So in the realm of engineering, I have developed a special interest in the field of laser technology and have even been taking a graduate course in quantum electronics. Among the 25 or so students in the course, I am the sole undergraduate. Another particular interest of mine is electromagnetics. And last summer, when I was a technical assistant at a world-famous local lab, I learned about its many practical applications, especially in relation to microstrip and antenna design. Now, this is further engagement and involvement into the major, but I thought it was important to label it focused on specialization. I do want to make a note, in the same way that he was able to take a course at a local college that was not offered as his high school, he's following that same pattern and taking a course and a graduate course in quantum electronics that is usually only available to graduate students. So that means he's testing very well in his regular engineering courses to the point that he was able to apply for some sort of exception as the sole undergraduate student among 25 or so graduate students, which is remarkable, and that is impressive. That would fit the uniqueness, the specialness, the impressiveness aspect of involving himself in the major and involving himself through coursework, etc. He's also giving you an interest in electromagnetics. He served as a technical assistant at a lab, and he was learning about practical applications, especially in relation to microstrip and antenna design. So he's giving you specifics from electrical engineering, well, actually from science, then a calculus course, then he's giving you the field of laser technology, quantum electronics, electromagnetics, microstrip, and antenna design. And he's working at a lab. So that means he's engaging the field, the major, through field work. And this is all important. This is the type of stuff that admissions officers want to see, that continued engagement. Now let's look at the future plans. And the only way that you can write this part of the personal statement is if you have researched the field. So he was talking about his time at the lab as a lab assistant. And so now he's going to discuss the management at the lab, but he's also going to give you a unique aspect of his engagement with the field as well as research. So management at this lab was sufficiently impressed with my work to ask that I return when I graduate. Of course, my plans following completion of my current studies are to move directly into graduate work toward my master's in science. After I earn my master's degree, I tend to start work on my PhD in electrical engineering. Later, I would like to work in the area of research and development for private industry. It is in R&D, research and development, that I believe I can make the greatest contribution utilizing my theoretical background and creativity as a scientist. So the management at the lab is definitely a very important insert into the personal statement. The fact that that he set a goal to engage his intended career objective through working at a lab, and then he set a goal to sustain his time there, learning as much as he can, applying knowledge from the academic classroom, and receiving some sort of recommendation or recognition from management that they were impressed with his work. And they were so impressed that they asked that he would return when he graduated. But I think it's very important that I like the fact that they did that, but I also think it was very important for him to realize that for him to make the greatest contribution to his field, that he would need a master's degree, and then followed by that with a PhD, because in research and development, you have to have the higher level advanced knowledge of the field, and that is accomplished with a PhD, especially if you want to become a scientist. Then he also makes a point, or this student makes a point, that he wants to work for private industry rather than the government, right, or for-profit industries. And so, because he feels like that he would have more time to be as creative as he needs to be. When you're working for profit or for the government, you tend to be rushed. Your creativity is rushed. Everything is about money, and you have to base all of your products on money. But for private industry, there's a little bit more time, space for him to be creative as a scientist, as he notes here. He also mentions the fact that he wants to be in R&D, research and development. So that's also going to take some time for him to be able to create hypothesis, test the hypothesis, create the results, use a methodology, learn from the experience, report results, and all of that takes time. And so that's why he feels that he would be much more suitable for the private industry with a PhD in research and development, so he can utilize not only the theoretical background as well as his creativity as a scientist, which sort of harkens back to him taking courses in humanities as well. So future plans do matter. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to make it seem like, to the committee that you have this all figured out and you know what it is that is required or something like that, and that they really don't know their field as much as you know the field. No, that's not what this is about. This is him understanding and envisioning himself as a PhD research scientist under for electrical engineering in the private industry, where he can both use theoretical background and creativity. So now let's speak to amenities. I am highly aware of the superb reputation of your school, and my conversations with several of your alumni have served to deepen my interest in attending. I know that in addition to your excellent faculty, your computer facilities are among the best in the state. I hope you will give me the privilege of continuing my studies at your fine institution. So that statement, continuing my studies, is so clear that he's just not using that as some sort of sentence to people please, that we can see through his record transcripts, as well as through the exploration in the personal statement, the previous paragraph, that he has been studying, that he has been engaging. So the statement that he's making here is not one that's just going to he's using to please the people who are reading the his personal statement. Also, admissions officers as well as the departments love it when you talk to the alumni. That's their whole goal. They love it when you talk to an alumni, because it's almost like a personal recommendation letter when you have spoken to the alumni. And he's also talking about the computer facilities, which are necessary for what he wants to do in addition to the lab. So he's talking about the reputation of the school. Now that could be a little bit of pleasing, people pleasing. But the conversations with the alumni is something that's very important. The mentioning of the computer facilities, as well as going back to when he wants to use this institution to continue his studies. So he's saying not only that he's suitable for the field, but he's saying that the institution is suitable for preparing him for the field as well. Now that we have gone over types of prompts, general questions to consider when you are planning to write your personal statement, we looked at a sample personal statement as well, and then of course the admissions advice. Before we get into the Bureau of Labor Statistics information, I want to do a quick knowledge check. So when you're thinking about everything that we have just gone over, do you know your major? How involved are you to date in your major? Are you interested in a specialization? Do you know the amenities the college and or major and or program offers based on your discipline or your major? And how have you prepared for writing the personal statement? And these are just knowledge check questions, just to gauge whether or not you have a clue about what it is that you want to do. Because if you're going to just get a 2-year associate's degree, at the community college level and then leave and go into your field, well, that's fine. You don't necessarily need to worry about a personal statement unless you are thinking about moving up the career ladder right after 2 years. And you can take the associate's degree and still move up the career ladder. But a personal statement is definitely a good, useful tool, whether or not you are going to transfer to the university setting or whether or not you are going to move up the career ladder or whether or not you are going to make financial life decisions, right? Because you can use much of what we have said to apply to your finances as well. So this is just a quick knowledge check that I want you to consider. Do you know your major? What have you been doing, or how involved are you to date in your major? And you don't have to put all of your eggs in one basket, pardon the cliche, but it is important that you understand that each semester you are at the community college level or in a transfer admission state, you want to adopt this as a particular plan for you, so that you don't wait too long and scramble at the end. And then, of course, are you interested in a specialization? Because if you want to get into a particular major that has specializations, and everything is kind of being tailored that way, even in business, it used to be that you could just major in general business, and that was sort of like a catch-all. Now majors, especially your business majors, are so specialized that you can specialize in nonprofit, grant management, accounting, of course, finance, investment banking, international business. You can have some political science aspects of it in terms of policies, things like that. Regulation. So there's a number of public administration. There's a number of specializations that you would consider within one particular major, if you are interested in that. So the first 2 years that you are out of high school and you are in a community college setting is the time that you should have, or you should take to work on your plan. Let's look at researching career information, researching colleges, of course. You using Bureau of Labor Statistics. We're going to look at a sample career description, the accountant, and then we're going to review a sample job announcement. And the purpose of that is essentially if you are interested in a particular field and you are looking to complete a degree in preparation for that field, it is a good idea to see what that field is asking for now. And so if you look at a 2021 job announcement of your particular field, in your particular field, and they are asking for X amount of things today in 2021 or this year in 2021, what do you think they're going to be asking for 4 years from now? And that's something to think about. So you want to be able to meet the industry needs now and plan for that now as if you were ready to enter the industry at this moment. So let's look at career information. So to write the personal statement, you will need to research 3 types of websites. That's your college website, of course, right? So always remember that you don't use a third-party website to find out information about your college. You go to the college website itself. Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to give you career preparation information. You can find other career preparation information on a third-party website, but they get all of their information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is basically the horse's mouth. And then, of course, a sample job announcement. You may also need to research prospective internships, volunteer programs, if your field requires these activities. So I know the business field, your science fields, your psychology fields require some sort of internship, right? For your arts and humanities, you get experience as a graduate teacher. Sometimes even at the undergraduate level, you may be able to teach a class as a student teacher, but you would need to know if your field requires certain types of internships. So there are two essential areas that you want to look for. That's your college website, of course, which is the undergraduate program, because even as a transfer student, you are still considered an undergraduate student, and that's all the work leading up to a bachelor's of science or bachelor's of arts in that particular major. Any of the degree requirements, you want to definitely know if you can complete that degree based upon the time you will be allotted or you allot yourself, the finances, right? So you want to look at your degree requirements. Course description. So it's very important to see if, for instance, if you want to major in creative writing, you want to know if that program has fiction, nonfiction courses, different other types of genres, so you can practice as much as possible. Other program information, it just depends on what that other program information is. And then, of course, important people. A lot of times you will have programs that require you to pick a faculty member you think you might want to work with. Now, you usually don't get that type of request until you get to graduate school, which is everything after the bachelor's degree. But you could still, for certain majors, especially in your sciences, your psychology, your business majors, you may be required to choose a faculty member that you can change later, but you may be required to choose a faculty member. Important people is important as well, because if your emphasis is say 20th century literature, 20th century novel, and you don't really have a faculty member who is focusing on the 20th century novel, that may not necessarily be the right program for you. It depends on what you want to do with that particular genre, that period of time. And then scholarship funding information. So it does make a big difference if the department offers scholarships, offers some type of funding to sort of support anything that you've already gotten as well, because anything can happen. So Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's a summary of intended career fields. So you go to Bureau of Labor Statistics, you type in your intended career objective, not the major, but your intended career objective. So remember, if you are wanting to major in accounting, then you are looking to become an accountant. So that's why you want to be sure. Also, what they do in terms of the person operating in that particular job or field. Work environment. So some work environments tend to be very stressful. That's something that you need to know. If you are the type of person who can't stand for long periods of time, then you need to make sure that you are choosing the right job that will allow you some flexibility in sitting down and standing up. I wouldn't pick a security guard job if you have to stand for 8 hours a day, right? So that's something to think about. How to become one. So, and these are the tabs on Bureau of Labor Statistics that you can click once you access the website, and it gives you a step-by-step sort of how to become one. Pay and Job Outlook. Now, you don't really need to refer or reference Pay and Job Outlook in a personal statement, but it's something for you to know. And then similar occupation. So again, how I noted that if you are not the type of person who likes to look at numbers all day, every day, then you might look at something, you may look at an occupation that might be similar to that without you having to sort of crunch those numbers all day, every day. So these are your two essential areas that you are looking, that you are using as research targets to get as much information about your major as well as your intended career objective. And of course, the job announcement, and this is a sample job announcement. So when you look at a job announcement, it's always going to give you a position type, the summary, the required knowledge, skills, and abilities, physical requirements, minimum knowledge and experience, essential duties, responsibilities, many application responses. So you may have an application that gives you, tell us why you feel like you're the best person for the job, right? And it basically is open-ended. I mean, it doesn't give you a really clear word count, so you could, shoot for the stars. But of course, you want to be succinct. And then application close date. And the reason why I put that there as a bullet point, because people forget that you may be permitted within the academic setting to turn in something late and still get some points for it. But there are consequences in the workforce environment if you turn in something late. And then there are times where you cannot turn in anything late, even within the academic environment, which implies or which prepares you for the workforce environment, that there are times you may not be able to turn in anything late, and that you're going to have to suffer the consequences of not turning something in on time. So your job announcement is it's not one of your main areas, but it's something for you to think about as you are planning out your career. So let's look at the college website. Here we have information. I like to use SMU. I'm in Dallas, and so I'm always going to use the English discipline because it's closer to me. But this is an undergraduate program where you can get a BA in English, and you can study American, British, and other literature. And then it gives you just a description of the program. In terms of the degree, it is for students who wish to obtain a broad liberal education as a foundation for careers or further study. And those careers might lead to law, administration, and business that require high proficiency in written and oral communication and in analytical thinking. And this is something that we kind of gloss over because until I created this PowerPoint lecture, I didn't really pay attention to it myself. But a broad liberal education is still a very good strategy, but that's why you need to look at the job announcement or the potential job announcement, because you need to focus your efforts. So if you're going to get a broad liberal education at the BA level, then you're going to need focus at the graduate level. That's why the law, the administration, the business will actually position you in a direction. Otherwise, if you get a broad liberal education, you're looking to get a BA, MA, PhD in English. And that's kind of where I went wrong, because I was assuming that I was going to get a BA, MA, PhD in English, and I'm still going to. But when I graduated with my master's degree, I realized in looking for jobs, I was only really trained for English and the academic context, which made me less competitive. I was qualified for jobs. You can be qualified for a job and not be competitive. And so had I taken some business courses, had I taken some technology courses, maybe I did take a little bit of a law course, business law and the legal environment, but that had been so long ago. So when I applied for jobs, it was hard for me to get jobs right after college, and the only jobs I could get were teaching, which is what I wanted anyway. But when you're trying to find work, it's you realize that you are not as competitive as you thought you were. So really pay attention to the descriptions that you see, because once you see the term broad liberal education, place that in quotation marks, that should be something that triggers your mind. Okay, if it's broad, I'm going to have to focus myself. Also, the three tabs that you see here: English major, creative writing specialization, and English minor, under the undergraduate program, are also important, and it depends on what it is you're trying to do. And each major or each department has, like a major and a minor, and then some specializations as well. And so you would have to choose which one is going to be the one that's going to be suitable for you. Therefore, you need to have, I really do believe today, you need to have some clue about what it is you want to do. And so if you're just going for the English major, you're going to be trained as an English major, and you're going to be trained to teach. And but you're not necessarily going to be trained to teach within or operate within a business environment, because you are not taking any business courses. Many majors, English majors, are changing their strategies. I know that there's one college in California, I can't remember, but I think it's Humboldt, where they are actually creating an applied English major, meaning that applied English is basically the use of psychology in English or whatever. And they are training their students to utilize English in different contexts. So they are bringing in technical aspects to the English domain, so that when you graduate, you can take your applied English degree and go into, different areas and learn and apply the communication standards in that way. So that's something also to think about. So let's look at Bureau of Labor Statistics, the accountant, and I'm not going to look at all the tabs, just the main ones. And what do they do? So you have a listing of things that they do, but accountants and auditors prepare and examine financial records, identify potential areas of opportunity and risk, and provide solutions for businesses and individuals. They ensure that financial records are accurate, that financial and data risks are evaluated, and that taxes are paid properly. They also assess financial operations and work to help ensure that organizations run efficiently. One of the things that I think is very important is that they ensure that financial records are accurate. Well, making sure something is accurate has its own process by itself, and that it requires a lot of patience to make sure something is accurate. How many times have you heard somebody say, who is concerned about money, trying to reconcile the financial statement and can't determine where that last $1.25 is, and then someone would say, well, just take out $1.25 and give it to yourself. No, you still want to figure out how you cannot account for that $1.25, and that's what that accountant does. You have to have that kind of not only preparation, but tolerance and patience and care and concern and conscientiousness to ensure that anything that you are compiling and assessing and evaluating is accurate. Many people have gone to jail for fraud, for accounting fraud. And so that means somewhere they were lax in their attitude towards numbers. That's why I say at the beginning, if you don't have a love for the numbers, then accounting is probably not for you, because it is all about the numbers. And you read financial statements in the same way that you might read a sheet of music. There, you should be able to detect the rhythm. You should look at that financial statement and be able to detect where something is off, where it's not singing the way it's supposed to sing. And so you can be very eager about wanting to enter the field of accounting and become an accountant, but not really have a full understanding of what is actually required for you in this field. And so don't gloss over that initial description there, because that word is very important. If your numbers are not right, the organization will not run efficiently. If your numbers are not right, it's going to affect the taxes you have to pay through the organization. If your numbers are right are not right, it's going to affect the individuals you have to pay, the businesses and the individuals, and your financial records are not going to be appropriate or accurate or efficient. So then you get into duties, and these are duties. And this page gives you much more information. I just only wanted to give just a little bit. But examine financial statements to ensure that they're accurate, of course. And accurate means that they also comply with laws and regulations. Compute taxes owed, prepare tax returns, ensure that taxes are paid properly and on time. Inspect account books and accounting systems for efficiency and use of accepted accounting procedures, and identify potential risks for fraud. Organize, analyze, maintain financial records, assess financial operations, risks and challenges, make best practices recommendations to management, and then suggest ways to reduce costs, enhance revenues, and improve profits. And this is what you are doing as an accountant. And you get a lot of practice in courses in those first prerequisite courses, right? So like for you to be able to get into certain math courses, you have to do, algebra or something like that. And you know that in math, you have to show your work. You just can't put the number down or the answer down. And if you don't have a patience to show your work in just regular math courses, how are you going to have the patience to show your work as an accountant? And that's what I think the people who end up going to jail are usually people who skip somewhere in their learning process. They thought, well, I don't have to show my work here. It's not going to matter here. I'm just going to put the answer down. When I become an accountant, then I show my work. But if you don't have the practice and the honor, really, and the work ethic of showing your work while you were training as a student, you're not going to do it as a contributor to your field. So these are your sort of, when you are going on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, and then you type in your intended career objective, this is the information that you really want to look for. And so how to become one, here's the extended information. So you need basically a bachelor's degree in accounting or related field to enter the occupation. You would also need a certification in this field, such as becoming a licensed certified public accountant. And the reason why you need a license is because you sign off on the financial documents, on the financial statements, the cash flow statement, the profit and loss statement, the income statement, the balance sheet. You sign off on a lot of the financial statements, and only licensed professionals really can do that. So if all you have is a bachelor's degree and you are not associated with the firm that is going to pay for your licensing, then you are no different than an accounting clerk until you get that license, because you can't really sign off on financial statements, right? And so knowing what is required of you by the time you graduate, I don't know if you can take the CPA license first before graduation. I don't know that. And that's something that I think about researching later. But you do know that if you want to enter this field, this occupation, then you're going to have not only the education, but the licensing as well. And so then you have, under education, you need a bachelor's degree or related fields such as business, science, technology, social science. Some employers prefer to hire applicants who have a master's degree, so that's something to know, either in accounting or business administration with a concentration in accounting. And then some universities and colleges offer specialized programs for a bachelor's or master's degree, such as accounting, forensic accounting, internal auditing, tax accounting. In some cases, those with an associate's degree, as well as bookkeepers, accounting, and auditing clerks who meet the education and experience requirements set by their employers, may get junior accounting positions and advance by showing their accounting skills on the job. Now, again, you can advance even with the 2-year associate's degree as well as the bachelor's degree. But if you're going to be labeled as a true accountant, where you sign off on the financial statements, you're going to have to get the licensing. And so the licensing, any accountant who files a report with the Securities and Exchange Commission is required to be a licensed certified public accountant or CPA. Other accountants choose to become a CPA to enhance their job prospects or to gain clients. Employers may pay the costs associated with the CPA exam. So again, if you are connected with a particular organization that sponsors, then sure, they may pay for you to study for the test. You do sort of like internship accounting work until you actually get your CPA license. So all of this information is good to know. And then here are your licensing information for the accountant. So You are licensed by their state's board of accounting, so it's state-based. Becoming a CPA requires passing a national exam and meeting other state requirements. All states require CPA candidates to complete 150 semester hours of college coursework to be licensed, which is 30 hours more than the usual 4-year bachelor's degree. Many schools offer a 5-year combined bachelor's and master's degree to meet the 150 hour requirement, but a master's degree is not required. And so when you are planning out your career, this is information that you need to know. That a lot of times people think, well, all the work that I did with my 4-year undergraduate degree, that should be enough. Why do I have to now go get a licensing? Well, that's the field. The field requires it, right? But it's good that you only have 30 more hours past the 4-year bachelor's degree. Now, you can get that through the master's degree because that's about 30 credit hours. But if you find a program that's a 5-year program combining bachelor's and master's degree, that may be a better deal for you. And the only reason why you may need to get a master's degree is because the field might require it. A lot of times for this particular field, you just need the bachelor's degree along with the license. A master's degree is not necessarily required. But if you wanted to move up into any administrative research position within this field, then you will need a master's degree, and you might even need a PhD, depending upon the industry. So this works if you stay in business, you just might need the bachelor's along with the licensing. But if you want to move into management, you might need the master's degree, like an MBA. But if you are in the academic environment, like educational institution, and you want to get into any administration work, like a dean or something like that, you will need a PhD. The PhD can really be in anything, but you would have to have one. So this is something, in each industry is different. If you were getting into research, nonprofit management, you might actually need a master's degree or a PhD as well. So this is something to know about. A few states allow a number of years of public accounting experience to substitute for a college degree. All states use the 4-part uniform CPA examination. You do not have to pass all 4 parts at once, but most states require that candidates pass all 4 parts within 18 months of passing their first part. So that's a year and 6 months, right? So you have to ask if your organization is willing to sort of sponsor you for 18 months. Just because they say you can take you have up to 18 months to take the rest of the parts. Here with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you still have to check with your agency or your organization. All states require CPAs to take continuing education courses, which include ethics to maintain their license. Certification provides an advantage in the job market because it shows professional competence in a specialized field of accounting and auditing. Accountants and auditors seek certifications from a variety of professional societies. So the reason why that's very important, because then it makes you competitive. If you look at each applicant with a bachelor's degree in accounting, okay, they are all qualified for the job, right? Doesn't mean they're going to get the job, but they are all qualified for it. However, what makes one candidate more competitive is the fact that they have a license, a CPA license. They've passed the CPA licensing test, and they actually have the license. Now that makes that person more competitive. That's what I mean, the difference between being qualified and being competitive. So that's something to think about. And then important qualities speak to personality. So it's important in this job that you are analytical and critical thinking. So accountants and auditors must be able to critically evaluate data, identify issues in documentation, suggest solutions. Internal auditors might detect fraudulent use of funds, Public accountants may work to minimize tax liability. Communication skills. So you must be able to listen to and discuss facts and concerns from clients, managers, stakeholders. You must also be able to discuss the results of their work, both in meetings and in written reports. Now, this is where English really comes in terms of your ability to communicate what you need to communicate within this particular field. So it does become very important. Detail oriented, so you must pay attention to detail when compiling and examining documents. So if you are just not the type of person who like to pay attention to detail, you are going to have a problem. You could have a love for the numbers but not be a detail oriented person. So that's something that you would have to work on and build an aptitude for. Math skills, you must be able to analyze, compare, interpret facts and figures. You will need advanced math skills such as calculus, statistical analysis for these tasks. Organizational skills, so they're very important for accountants and auditors because you have to work with a range of financial documents. You also have to pay attention to the general accepted accounting accepted principles that are specific to the field. You have laws and regulations that you have to abide by. You have the company policy. If your company is accredited in any way for any sort of educational purpose, you have to pay attention to that. And so this field requires a lot of your head knowledge, a lot of your head space. It's going to take time to do the things you need to do. So if you struggle with procrastination, it's going to show up. If you struggle with organization, it's going to show up. It does make a difference if you tend to be OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, not necessarily as a disorder, but just a person who cares about how things are done. So here's a sample job announcement. It's not necessarily related to the accounting job, but I thought it was interesting that for this job announcement, it was asking for a number of things that I believe are kind of related. So let's look at it for a minute. Student life coordinator. And this is within an academic context. And I thought it was interesting the way that the job announcement put the first sentence or the first bullet point. Knowledge of the purpose of community colleges and the vision of Dallas College. So this is my college I work for. And so I decided to just take a job announcement. And the reason why I chose this one over, say, a accounting job announcement is simply because when you are applying to these organizations, they are looking for long-term commitment. They're not looking for one and done applicants. For entry-level positions that are maybe 2 years or so, of course, they may sort of be tolerant of that. But when you get into positions that require some kind of supervising, management, or something like that, they care about your understanding and knowledge about, say, that organization, that field, that type of company or whatever. That's why companies ask, is there anything, hiring professionals ask the job applicant, is there anything that you would like to ask us? And that requires, if you're going to ask a question, that requires you knowing about the company and what the company is doing. And it's specific to the type of job you are applying to. If you were applying to admissions, say for instance, to become an admissions representative, it will be important that you know the main numbers. How many applications are usually submitted? How many people tend to be admitted into the institution? And how many come in with a certain GPA? What are the goals of the university in terms of admission, in terms of retention, those types of things. So that's information that you would need to know and understand the vision of that organization. Now, you can switch out Dallas College for Starbucks or for Microsoft or for Google, right? Understanding the purpose of that type of, technology or social media organization and the vision of that organization. Then, of course, you would need skills in technological support, delivery of student programs, use of Microsoft application software. You also need to be knowledgeable about student programs and the planning, because you will be the student life coordinator. There are also processes that require planning, researching, developing, implementing. This is a multitask environment, so you can't be the type of person who tells everybody, just wait. I get it when I get it. Some environments require you just to build the work ethic along the way, and you're going to have to work through your own emotions. Then you also have to understand that this is a job that requires you to travel, and you also need to be able to work with a diverse population that is both ethnic, culture, and social, as well as economically. So then we have a minimum in terms of educational requirements. You need just an associate's in the field. You need 3 years working with student clubs and organizations. You need to be able to work extended hours beyond 8 to 5 workday. You need administrative and leadership experience, a current driver's license, some advising experience with a student organization, working with diverse student and staff populations, excellent interpersonal skills, and you will have to sit for a criminal background check. That means you will need a fingerprint. And so that's why if you understood these types of things now, you would make sure your life stays on track. That's why this is important. This is not just important in terms of experience, but you don't want anything that can hinder you from having a job, for one, and that can hinder you from having a job that would allow you to move up the ladder. And so being able to come in with an application where you don't have to have a criminal background is just as important. I think if people spent more time reading up on the laws about criminal misbehavior, and how many years they can get as a result of doing something criminal, they may not do it. If I knew a person who is a burglar or a person who murdered someone or sold drugs, if I knew that I could get 25 years in prison for it, I wouldn't. There's no way in the world I would do that. But we all get into things because we don't know. We truly don't know. And once we get in, it's hard to get out in terms of making a decision to go somewhere else, because now you got a record. So that's why I put this here. It's not just to look at what is required of you 4 years from now, what might be required of you 4 years from now, but also look at, if you stay on the right track and you work hard to get to wherever you need to get to, you are less likely to get into a lot of silliness. And so then here you are managing, and this is a very important aspect of this particular job. So you manage and coordinate business details with clubs and department functions, including monitoring their budget, initiating contracts, negotiating with agents and performers, ticket sales, physical arrangements, maintaining associated records and reports, publicity, promotional materials, things like that, because whatever you are doing has to support the larger brand, which is the institution. So these are the individual things that you would have to do at this level. That means you are also developing learning outcomes as it relates to specific programs and events. You need to maintain assessments and evaluations, prepare long-range plans, projections for co-curricular, extracurricular programs. You are researching, reviewing, planning programs and events. You may drive students or staff members to meetings, functions, and events. You also prepare statistical reports. That's why that class in statistics is very important. And this is something that you can make a point of in your interview, that you stay abreast of statistical reporting. You take classes, you take courses, you complete them with a grade of A or something like that. You also need to be able to assist in the monitoring of assigned budget allocation. So you select, train, evaluate, assign staff. You may oversee student staff and identification card issuance, arranging weekend operations. So this is basically your life. And this is important if you ever wanted to get into the role of, director or managing director or anything like that, because this gives you a lot of managing experience. And then continuing education, in the same way as the accountant is required to complete continuing education hours, you would be required in this field, in this particular job, to complete professional development training hours. And this basically just helps you to improve your communication skills, work with, diverse internal, external stakeholders, constituents of the Dallas College Community Network. And then, of course, you would provide customer service. So let's look at a knowledge check. Do you know your future career expectations? How involved are you to date in planning your future career role? Are you interested in a career specialization? Do you want to work for a large corporation, a boutique firm, or a family company? What are your special qualities specific to your personality traits? Do you feel those special qualities are appropriate for the career? So again, we all know that if you are just coming in out of college and you graduated, you need to pay your dues. And so what does that look like? Of course, you're going to enter a job just to get your foot in the door, but then you start researching the different job announcements, right, specific to that company, the different roles people hold, and you say to yourself, okay, I can do what she's doing. How do I prepare for that? Then I guess then you would go and speak with the supervisor. You're not trying to take somebody's job, but you are preparing to move up. And not many people will like that, but it's something that you need to know if it's a possibility. And then how involved are you today in planning your future career role? Meaning that you can't take the CPA license right now. I don't know. I think you have to have a certain number of hours before you have to take that test. But you can get the booklet and start looking through it and thinking about what is required of you to know. In the same way that if you were wanting to go to law school, you can start looking at the LSAT and start training on it. And then, of course, are you interested in a career specialization? I think a very important question is the type of company you want to work for. Do you want to work for a large corporation, or do you want to work for a boutique firm, or do you have the personality for a family company? And you definitely have to have the personality for a family company. It can't be that you are so isolated when the environment is much more collaborative, right? So that's very important as well. So preparing your personal statement, pre-writing, writing, revising, rewriting, editing, and proofreading. So pre-writing your personal statement is dependent on your self-assessment. Pre-writing your personal statement will determine if you know anything about your intended major and your intended career field. Jotting down a few ideas regarding the writing prompt is important for conducting a first assessment of what you know about yourself, the academic program, and the school you are interested in attending. So your self-assessment writing process is a process. It takes some time. That's why it's important to keep a journal or speak into a phone or something like that, so that you can take some time to think about you and where you want to take you. Writing. So the writing prompt is, again, what is the intended major field? How did the writer's interest in the major or field develop? Describe the writer's experiences in the major field. And what has the writer gained as a result of his or her involvement in the major field? So this is a recap of the writing and prompt that you want to think about. Now, you can always substitute this for different other types of words if you are already in the field and you are wanting to move up the corporate ladder to maybe one day become vice president or something. Then your intended objective would be to become vice president of a particular department. And how did your interest in that particular job develop, right? What have you done to date, essentially? What has been your experiences, and then what have you gained as a result of just basically involving yourself? So revising your personal statement is based on your academic, professional, personal goals. What are your academic goals? What are your professional goals? And what are your personal goals? So academic is always that course information that you need to know, that you need to complete. So that's always going to be the undergraduate. The professional goals depends upon whether or not you're going to need an advanced degree or whether or not you're going to move up the organizational ladder. So it depends on what you want to do. It depends on the specialization. And then what are your personal goals? Personal goals could be marriage. It could be having kids or something like that. But I always like to look at personal goals as financial wellness. That personal goal, because if you can get money right, you can just about have whatever life you want to have. It's when your finances are out of whack and you are not doing the things you need to do financially, it affects all areas of your life. Also, personal goals, you want to be careful about the things that you do, the things you take on, the people that you help, because if your personal life is not focused, if it is not where it needs to be, again, it's going to affect every other area of your life. And so revising your personal statement based on academic, professional, personal goals, it's going to be an ongoing task for you in terms of your life. But when you are revising it to submit a personal statement with your application, what are those personal goals? So I want to get into what I mean about the differences between academic goals, professional goals, and personal goals. And I want to look at a particular scholarly source by Angela Lee Duckworth and James J. Gross. And that source is titled Self-Control and Grit, Related but Separable Determinants of Success. And we're going to get into a few key quotes from that scholarly source. And in that source, the two authors discuss the hierarchical goal framework. And at the bottom, you see actions, and then you see lower order goals, and then higher order goals, and then the larger superordinate goal. That's your dominant goal, what you might say your dream or your vision, right? So for instance, you want to become CEO of a company, and your actions might be to start off with a little business of your own, right? And then you take coursework, you complete different levels, and you set maybe a 5-year goal, then a 10-year goal, and then the ultimate goal would be that it took you about 25 years to become a CEO. And you see that a lot with CEOs of major companies, that they work themselves from the bottom, right? They work their way up from the bottom, and they were, I don't know, in the mailroom in the beginning of their start. They took on an entry-level position. They were in the mailroom, and then they moved up to another level, whatever level that was. They took some courses. They went to school. They completed a degree, and then they moved on up to maybe an administrative level. So they might have started out in the mailroom. Then they became a coordinator, and then a supervisor, a manager, likely a director, vice president, president, and then now they are CEO or president and CEO. So that's what we want to look at in terms of the hierarchical goal framework and how you can then set your academic, professional, and personal goals. So the hierarchical goal framework, the higher order goals are typically fewer in number, more abstract, more enduring, and more important to the individual, right? That's the 3 goals you saw at the top. Then the lower order goals are more numerous, context specific, short-term, and substitutable. So for instance, if you were setting an academic goal to complete a particular degree, and along your path, one of those courses is no longer offered, but it is required for your degree program. Of course, the university is going to provide an alternative. So that means that that lower order goal towards completing a degree is substitutable. It doesn't mean that you stop your dream. You just may have to take a setback, or you may have to take another course to fulfill that dream. So this is the difference between higher order goals and lower order goals. So let's look at the how you would determine your goals. You have academic, professional, and personal. And so let's look at them all for a minute here. So academic, you know you need to get a bachelor's degree if you are going to enter certain fields. A degree is not always required to have a job, but if you are going to have a career and contribute to your field, you will need a degree eventually. So that's your bachelor's degree. Some fields only require the bachelor's degree and maybe a few continuing education courses or like a licensing. So for instance, for accounting, you might just need the 4-year degree plus the CPA license, and that might be fine. Of course, if you ever decided to move up the corporate ladder and into an administrative position, you will need an advanced degree, usually an MBA. So you have your bachelor's, your master's degree, any licenses or certifications. So I know if you want to get into the financial field, tax field, accounting fields, any of those types of fields, they usually require some sort of licensing, certification, and as well as continuing education. Continuing education could be at the institution, or it could be through the job. The job might require you to complete professional development courses. So for a career, and really today, any job now requires some sort of work towards improving yourself or updating your knowledge base. So let's look at professional. So if we are looking at professional, it is clear that everyone has to pay their dues. Paying their dues is always entry level. And you stay in a position 2 to 5 years at the entry level, whatever that job is, whatever that position is, whatever that industry is. And then the normal trajectory is always supervisor to manager. And so you stay in that job 5 to 8 years. And that's because you want to build a record of success. Just because you do something well the first time does not necessarily mean that you should be promoted. The problem with some companies is, and some people who are in charge, they want to promote someone just because they had that one success. And they sort of discount the person who has stayed in a position and has built a record of successes. And so they look at that person as almost stagnant, which is really odd, because the person who has done something well just once really hasn't proven himself or herself that they can do it again. So you want to stay in positions 2 to 5 years, depending upon what it is you are trying to accomplish. So 5 to 8 years, supervisor manager, director to VP, likely 10 to 15 years. So that's at your 10th year, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th year. And then by the time you become a CEO or entrepreneur, that's 15 plus years. And I want to make a distinction with entrepreneur. People think just because they start a business that they are considered an entrepreneur. No, you just created a job for yourself. And so you basically have to go through the whole steps that you see here to later become an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a person who has multiple businesses, starts and sustains and is successful in multiple businesses, that you can then call that person an entrepreneur, and then CEO of their own company, because for those businesses, they tend to have presidents, vice presidents, supervisors, managers, directors, etc. So that's the difference between you just starting a job, starting a company, which is essentially creating a job for yourself, and actually being a company that owns multiple companies, like what you would see on Shark Tank. Now let's look at personal. So finances, I feel, are the most important, next to romance, and then by extension, toxic relationships. And these are the areas I feel, finances, toxic relationships, family relationships, and then personal growth. Finances and toxic relationships are the two types of relationships that you have that can affect you in your professional life, and definitely in your academic life if they are a distraction. How many times have we seen people go down publicly because of what was going on in their personal life? So finances is something that can take you down quicker than anything if you don't have a good handle on your money, and how you use your money, and where you put your money, and what you do with your money with other people. And then of course, toxic relationships can be such a addiction if depending upon the type of relationship, and you don't want to worry about something like that as you are trying to go up the career ladder, or as you are trying to get your degrees, especially if you are going for a PhD. So these are areas that you want to think about in terms of how to determine your goals, because if you get into one toxic relationship and you don't resolve that within yourself, you are bound, or you are likely to get into another type of toxic relationship, just with a person with a different face. And so they will continue to follow you around until the point that what you are doing personally becomes public. And then family relationships, the family dynamic could have been a toxic dynamic, or it could have been a very helpful, supportive dynamic. It makes a difference. It makes a difference who you pick as a wife or who you pick as a husband, because if they are not supportive, they're going to be very, destructive towards your goals. So that's family relationships. What you do with your family, what you do with yourself, what you do with your kids are all important. And then personal growth is something that you want to set as a goal. For me, personal growth is trying to tackle my finances, and I'm in the process of creating audio lectures for that, so that I'm just no longer struggling in that area with the misunderstanding, with the misguided, misinterpreted understanding that I am moving towards financial wellness. And so those are areas that I also want to tackle. So when we're looking at academic goals, the subordinate goal would be the BA or BS or a graduate degree. So that's the goal that's at the top right there, that one goal. And what oftentimes people do, they try to change up their goals, or they try to change the dominant goal. They will go good in one thing, and then all of a sudden they switch, right? So you want to be careful about the goals you set in terms of the dominant goal, because once you change a dominant goal, all of the goals under it and the actions that begin that goal will eventually have to be changed out. And your lower order goals tend to be more substitutable, but by the time you get to your higher order goals, which in this case, as an academic program, your lower order goals would be those goals that are part of your, say, your lower division courses, right? And then your higher order goals would be those upper division courses. And then that dominant goal is the actual degree program itself, a degree rather. And so if you are changing out goals in the lower order, I don't think you would have a problem. But once you get to your upper division, it's something you want to think about. So then the higher order goal would be upper division coursework. Lower order goal would be lower division coursework, electives. And actions are that sustained enrollment. So your application, your registration, your sustained enrollment. That's why I always tell my students who are struggling when they have jobs and they may have to drop a class or something like that. I tell them, take one class a semester until you can get everything situated with your job. Because once you get out, once you leave the campus or stop enrollment, you are likely to put something else in that place. And if you put something else in that place, it may take you a while to come back. Sometimes that something else could be a friendship, it could be family, it could be another job. And if you have to take care of yourself, you just have to take care of yourself. I'm not going to down anybody for that. But if the goal is to get a degree, you got to set that as a very achievable goal, which it can be. And you may have to switch out your schedules. You may have to take an online course until you can get back on track. But don't stop. Keep that sustained enrollment. Keep that sustained registration. So let's look at professional goals. So the dominant goal is to become a CEO entrepreneur, 15 plus years. And that's at year 15. So then the higher order goal will be supervisor, manager, director, vice president, 5 to 10 years. The lower order goal would be any entry level, 2 to 5 years. And then the actions, of course, would be the degree you already have already achieved, and then job application. So it's kind of funky here, but your actions here would be you applying for jobs. It could be a number of things as well, because you would have a degree. You may have to have a license, you may have to do continuing education or something like that. And the lower order goal would be that entry level position. So those are your lower order goals, and you may be moved around multiple times as a entry level employee, so you have to keep that in mind as well. And then a high order goal, you want to spend more time building a record of success, that those 5 to 10 years, so that when you do apply to become a CEO, you are competitive. Like I said in, I think earlier in this lecture, that you can be qualified for a job but not be competitive. That someone could have much more than you. They can have the base degree and have a number of years of experience as well, but they may have an additional certificate in something. They may have a license in something. They might have done a double major in something. They might have done an internship or volunteer work or something like that that made them much more competitive. So that's what you want to think about. Personal goals. So the dominant goal would be financial wellness. You want to sustain your financial thrive. And this should be a dominant goal for everybody. Some people think that the personal goal, that the dominant goal is to be married, or the dominant goal is to have a house, or the dominant goal for your personal to go on vacations every year, something like that. Save some money every year for vacation. Really, your personal goal, the dominant goal under your personal goals should be financial wellness. That given any sort of incident, any sort of issue that happens, if you lost your job, if you lost due to the pandemic that's going on right now, or the recent recession, that you still have enough money in the bank to sustain you at least for the first 2 years, right? Financial wellness also means wherever you are financially ill, wherever that is, whatever the gap in your knowledge base is, you want to reach towards financial wellness. You should not have to be evicted from your place. You should not have to be foreclosed on your home if you have the right financial goals. And I feel like, for me, and I'm biased, that your personal goal should be a financial goal, that you can sustain taking care of yourself, managing yourself, sustaining you as a grown individual, 100% responsible for yourself, all the way until retirement and afterwards. That's why you don't get into get rich quick schemes. You don't give your money once your money making years are over, in terms of you being retired, you don't just up and give a lot of money to your kids, your grown kids, right? And so that's why I feel like the personal goal should be a financial wellness goal. So then your higher order goal would be create a long-term retirement plan, resolve financial problems, reassess and revise that plan. Meaning that by the time you do retire in 65, and some people are retiring a little later than that, but by the time you do retire, you have what you need in terms of a retirement plan. You have resolved any type of financial problem. I will work very hard to pay off the house, period. Because I don't want to be old struggling to pay a house and have to be foreclosed on or something like that. And so it's securing yourself financially. That's what that means. It's securing yourself financially. And some people got a clue. They get a clue about that much earlier in life, like in their 20s. So by the time they get to their 40s, their house is already paid off. 25 years, 30 years, and their house is already paid off. And so then you can make the kinds of decisions, financial decisions, when your home is set and secure. And I wish I had understood that much earlier in life. I had a couple of instances, well, at least one where the person was around the same age as me. I think she was just a few months older than I am rather. And she just had a clue about it. Very early, she got a house while we were working on the same job, and the job was a fly-by-night company, but she managed to get a house on that job. And I saw her some years later, which would have been, I think, her 20th something year. I can't remember, maybe the 25th year. And I saw her in the mall, and she told me she had paid off that house. And we're the same age and everything. And I wasn't jealous of her, but it stung. It stung a little bit because I felt like she was there as an opportunity 20 years prior, that had I paid attention and listened to her and befriended her instead of all the people who were not going anywhere and hanging out with them, and stayed with her as a friend, something on her would have gotten off on me. And so that's what I kind of think about. That's what I teach now. That's why I make sure to push these ideas, because she learned much earlier to secure herself financially. Then your lower order goals: manage your debt, create a savings plan, set boundaries, meaning that you, just because you have the money in the bank doesn't necessarily mean that money is available for someone else. Because remember, whatever you have in a bank is really the next month's rent or the next month's mortgage. And you give that up, even if you still have your job and you have savings in other areas, if you give that up, you won't have access to it. And so people still need to be able to take care of themselves as grown adults. So that lower order goal is you still managing debt, making a plan to end certain debt, creating a savings plan, creating the emergency savings plan, and of course, setting boundaries. And then of course, your actions would be manage income, establish credit. So if you are new to the game, and you need to get into the credit industry to build credit and to create a credit score, then it might be a good idea for you to get a credit card or to get a secured credit card, right? But you definitely want to manage income. A lot of times when our debt exceeds our income, we don't necessarily have just a debt problem. We have an income problem. And so I listen to a lot of Dave Ramsey's YouTube podcast or something, and many callers come in who call in, and they are talking about how they are $300,000 in student loan debt and only make $28,000 a year. And so one caller said that, and my mouth just jumped, but I'm also in student loan debt, and not at $300,000, but it's significant. And that got me that they would have $300,000 at $28,000 a year. And one of the partners is working, but the other person is not, because she decided to quit the job to take care of the kids. And I understand that has to happen if you are having kids. But I don't think today anybody should be without a job. of something. Even if she worked 2 days out of the week, she's connected to something. So if something happens with her husband, she could easily increase her hours if they are available. And it just keeps something, it keeps you in the industry, it keeps you working, it gives you a recommendation letter if you need it or something like that. So managing income, we need to be very careful about what we take on, and how well we increase in that, but we also want to be careful not to quit something until we have something else. So managing income. So when you are rewriting the personal statement requires an informed point of view about the following: academic intentions, professional aspirations, personal life management. So rewrite the personal statement with both your own self-assessment and objective assessment of the major intended field and what you hope to accomplish long term. Now, of course, you don't want to mention pay outlook, job outlook in the personal statement. We can find that information on our own. But when you are rewriting the personal statement, you do need to have some idea about your academic intentions and what is required long term for you to contribute to your field all the way up to retirement age. You need to be honest with yourself about your professional aspirations. What do you really want to become? And you will take this entry level position all the way up to the next positions until you can get to the position you really want. And then, of course, your personal life management. This goes without saying. It is really time out for us to continue engaging in these types of relationships that do not mean us well. And that the reason why I want you to pay attention to this personal life management, because we don't always think of it. We jump hastily into situations, we get into things, and we reflect too late. And then we are now in it, and it's now affecting our job, and exes are coming onto the job and harassing us. And this is something, if you understand what it is you are trying to accomplish academically, professionally, you would think twice about what you engage in personally. So that's what I want you to think about when you are rewriting your personal statement. So editing and proofing how you edit is based on the requirements of the application and the academic program. How you edit is based on whether you have a good understanding of tailored programs. How you proofread is based on that final process after writing, researching, revising, and then rewriting again. You do not proofread as you write. How you proofread is based on your ability to present the best you in writing. So when you are editing and proofreading, you want to make sure that you have tailored that individual personal statement to that particular institution, to the amenities of that institution, and the program itself. And so then when you are proofreading, you want to proofread for grammar, punctuation. It's a very clean final draft. So here are your takeaways. Develop a persuasive argument, meaning that your personal statement is a sales presentation. Answer the question asked. Understand the differences. Understand the anchor. What is the personal statement asking of you? Tailor the personal statement to each college, undergraduate program. Research additional personal statements you might need for your admissions application. So a lot of times that one personal statement is for the main entrance into the admission into the institution, but then your department might have a personal statement. And if there's instructions that basically suggest you can use the same personal statement from admissions for that department, go ahead and use it. But if there is a different writing prompt, you want to write to that prompt. Be sure to close any gaps in your application. Most applications would not would not continue. If you receive an email from an institution saying you need to close out the gap in your application, make sure you do that. Otherwise, they cannot continue on with that application. Research your intended major and intended career field to write from an informed point of view. So that's very important. You don't want to come off as a know-it-all, but you do want to come off with the understanding that it's going to take X amount of years for you to complete the levels you need to complete for that particular degree program, as well as your intended career objective. Revise your personal statement. Know that your personal statement is a work in progress, subject to further revision as you add knowledge, experiences, and completion of goals. So remember, this one personal statement is not the only one you are going to write. You might write an additional personal statement throughout your academic career. You might write one for the professional arena, depending upon the intended career objective. So these are the sources you want to think about and look at. So Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Duckworth and Gross source, and then of course writing the personal statement from Purdue OUT. Thank you so very much for listening to this audio lecture of the personal statement. Please take some time to review it again for particular key points. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification button for further audio lectures. Thank you for visiting the channel.